Welcome to this gentle exploration of wisdom and awareness. As you settle into comfort, allow yourself to simply listen, to breathe, and to rest. There is nothing you need to do but be present with these reflections. Let the words wash over you like a calm stream, carrying you toward peace and understanding. We begin our journey by contemplating the nature of wisdom itself. In the Buddhist tradition, wisdom is not simply the accumulation of facts or the memorization of teachings. Wisdom arises from direct insight into reality, not mere knowledge. Think about the difference between reading about the ocean and standing at its shore, feeling the salt spray on your skin, hearing the rhythm of the waves. Knowledge might tell you about water and tides, but wisdom comes from the direct experience of the ocean's presence. In the same way, true wisdom emerges when we see reality as it actually is, not through the filter of concepts and ideas we've collected, but through our own clear, direct perception. This is why the Buddha encouraged his followers not to accept his teachings blindly, but to test them through their own experience, to taste the truth for themselves. As we relax deeper, we come to understand what true wisdom focuses on. The Buddha taught that genuine wisdom centers on three fundamental characteristics of existence. True wisdom focuses on impermanence, suffering, and non-self. These are not pessimistic observations but liberating insights. Impermanence means that all things change, all conditions are temporary, nothing remains fixed or permanent. When we truly see this, we stop grasping at experiences, trying to freeze moments in time, trying to make the temporary permanent. Suffering, or dukkha, refers to the unsatisfactory nature of existence when we don't see things clearly, when we cling and resist. And non-self, perhaps the most profound insight, reveals that what we think of as a solid, unchanging self is actually a flowing process, a collection of changing elements with no fixed essence at the center. These three insights form the foundation of wisdom. Now, breathing softly, we consider how this wisdom develops within us. Wisdom develops through ethical living, meditation, and reflection. It is not a sudden revelation that appears from nowhere, but a gradual unfolding that happens through practice. Ethical living purifies our actions and intentions, creating the conditions for clarity to arise. When we live with integrity, speaking truthfully, acting with kindness, respecting the well-being of others, we create less turbulence in our lives and minds. Meditation quiets the constant chatter of thought, allowing us to see beneath the surface of our habitual patterns. And reflection, the careful consideration of our experiences and the teachings, helps us integrate wisdom into our understanding. These three work together like the legs of a tripod, each supporting the others, creating stability for wisdom to grow. As you continue to rest, consider what blocks this wisdom from arising. Ignorance is the root delusion blocking understanding. In Buddhism, ignorance doesn't mean lack of education or intelligence. It refers to a fundamental misunderstanding of reality, a not seeing of things as they truly are. Ignorance is like a fog that obscures our vision, making us mistake shadows for substance, making us believe in permanence where there is only change, making us construct a solid self where there is only flowing process. This ignorance is considered the root cause of all suffering because it leads us to grasp at things that cannot be grasped, to build our lives on foundations that cannot hold. When we don't see impermanence, we create attachment. When we don't see non-self, we create ego clinging. When we don't see the nature of suffering, we perpetuate the very patterns that cause us pain. Settling even deeper now, we examine what feeds this ignorance. Ego clinging and conditioned thinking fuel suffering. The ego, that sense of being a separate, solid, permanent self, constantly works to defend and enhance itself. It seeks pleasure and avoids pain, compares itself to others, tells stories about who we are and who we should be. This ego clinging creates a prison of self-concern, where everything is filtered through the question of what this means for me. And our conditioned thinking, the patterns and habits of mind we've developed through years of experience and cultural influence, keeps us locked in familiar loops. We see what we expect to see. We react in habitual ways. We mistake our interpretations for reality itself. Together, ego clinging and conditioned thinking keep us spinning in cycles of dissatisfaction, always seeking but never quite finding lasting peace. As your body relaxes more fully, consider the path through this ignorance. Overcoming ignorance requires personal experience, not secondhand knowledge. You cannot become wise by simply accepting what others tell you, even if those others are great teachers or enlightened beings. The Buddha himself said that his teachings are like a finger pointing at the moon. You must look at the moon, not just stare at the finger. Reading scriptures, listening to teachings, studying philosophy, these can point us in the right direction, but the actual work of seeing clearly must happen in your own direct experience. When you sit in meditation and watch your thoughts arise and dissolve, you're not learning about impermanence, you're witnessing it directly. When you observe how clinging to pleasure leads to disappointment, you're not accepting a theory, you're learning from life itself. This is why practice is so essential. It's where wisdom transforms from concept to lived reality. Breathing easily, we reflect on what this insight brings. Insight into reality leads to liberation from cycles of suffering. When we see clearly, when ignorance lifts and wisdom arises, something profound happens. We begin to let go, not because we force ourselves to let go, but because we see there's nothing to hold on to. The things we've been grasping at are like trying to grasp water. They flow through our fingers naturally. This letting go is not a loss but a liberation. We find freedom from the constant anxiety of trying to control what cannot be controlled, from the exhaustion of defending a self that doesn't exist in the way we thought, from the disappointment of seeking permanence in an impermanent world. The cycles of suffering, the patterns of craving and aversion, the wheel of becoming and dissolving, these begin to lose their grip on us. We find peace not by escaping life but by understanding it. Sinking deeper into tranquility, we explore a specific aspect of wisdom. Recognizing impermanence counters attachment to fleeting things. When you truly understand that everything changes, that nothing lasts, that all experiences are temporary, something shifts in how you relate to life. You still enjoy beautiful moments, but you don't desperately try to make them last forever. You still feel sadness when things end, but you're not shocked or outraged by endings, because you understand that endings are woven into the fabric of existence. A flower blooms and wilts, a relationship begins and transforms, pleasure arises and fades, pain comes and eventually goes. Nothing is exempt from change. When you see this clearly, not as a depressing thought but as a simple truth, you stop building your happiness on foundations of sand. You learn to appreciate each moment as it is, knowing it will never come again in quite the same way, and this appreciation is itself a form of freedom. As you rest in stillness, we consider another dimension of wisdom. Understanding suffering fosters compassion for oneself and others. When you truly investigate suffering, when you look deeply into your own pain and difficulty, you discover something remarkable. You see that suffering is universal. Everyone struggles. Everyone experiences loss, disappointment, fear, confusion. Everyone is trying to find happiness, often in ways that don't work, that actually create more suffering. This understanding naturally gives rise to compassion for yourself, because you see that your struggles aren't signs of personal failure but part of the human condition. For others, because you recognize that their difficult behaviors often come from their own pain and ignorance. Compassion doesn't mean accepting harmful actions, but it means understanding the conditions that give rise to them. When you see how suffering works, how it arises from ignorance and craving and aversion, you naturally feel moved to reduce suffering wherever you find it, to treat yourself and others with kindness and understanding. Finally, as you drift toward deeper rest, we contemplate the liberation that comes from the deepest wisdom. Realizing non-self reduces ego-driven reactions. The insight into non-self, into the absence of a fixed, permanent, separate self, is perhaps the most transformative understanding in Buddhist practice. When you see that the self you've been defending and enhancing is actually a construction, a constantly changing process rather than a solid thing, the whole landscape of your mind shifts. The insults that once wounded you lose their sting because there's no solid self to be insulted. The praise you once craved becomes less intoxicating because there's no separate self to be inflated. The comparisons that once troubled you fade because there's no fixed self to compare. What remains is a flowing, responsive awareness that meets life moment by moment, without the constant filter of me and mine. This doesn't mean you become passive or lose your personality, but rather that you stop being enslaved by ego concerns. You act with wisdom and compassion because it's natural, not because you're trying to maintain or improve a self-image. You become free to respond to life with spontaneity and clarity, unburdened by the weight of self-obsession. Rest now in these reflections. Let them settle into your awareness like stones dropped into a still pond, creating ripples that spread outward and then fade into stillness. There is nothing to grasp, nothing to achieve, only this moment of peace, only this breath, only this gentle awareness. May wisdom arise naturally in your experience. May you find freedom from suffering. May you rest in the understanding that liberates. As we continue this gentle journey into rest and understanding, allow yourself to settle even more deeply. Feel the weight of your body supported beneath you. Notice the rhythm of your breathing, natural and effortless. In this moment, there is nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to do. Simply rest here as we explore the beautiful practice of awareness and mindfulness. We begin by understanding what awareness truly means in the Buddhist context. Awareness is clear seeing of body, mind, feelings, and phenomena. This is not an abstract concept, but a very practical, immediate capacity we all possess. Right now, you can be aware of your body, the sensations present in this moment, perhaps the softness of fabric against your skin, the temperature of the air, the weight and position of your limbs. You can be aware of your mind, the thoughts that drift through like clouds across the sky, appearing and dissolving. You can be aware of your feelings, the emotional tones that color your experience, whether calm or restless, peaceful or agitated, content or longing. And you can be aware of phenomena, all the experiences that arise in consciousness, sounds in the distance, the quality of light even through closed eyelids, the entire field of your experience. This clear seeing is like turning on a light in a room you've been stumbling through in darkness. Suddenly, you can see where you are, what's present, what's actually happening rather than what you imagine or fear or hope is happening. We find peace not by escaping life, but by understanding it. Breathing softly and naturally, we explore what this awareness brings into our lives. Mindfulness frees one from craving, regrets, and distractions. When you are truly present, fully aware of this moment exactly as it is, something remarkable happens. The craving for things to be different begins to dissolve. Craving lives in the gap between what is and what we wish were true. But when we're simply present with what is, when we're not resisting or grasping, that gap closes. Similarly, regrets about the past lose their power when we return to this moment, because regrets can only exist when we're mentally living in what was rather than what is. And the countless distractions that normally fragment our attention, the worries, the plans, the replaying of conversations, the imagining of scenarios, all of these require us to leave the present moment. Mindfulness is like dropping an anchor into the now, and when we're anchored here, we're free from the turbulence of craving what we don't have and regretting what we can't change. We find a natural ease, a simple being with what is. Settling deeper into relaxation, we discover the attitude that mindfulness brings. Mindfulness fosters openness to each present moment. Rather than approaching experience with a closed mind, with fixed ideas about how things should be, mindfulness opens us to receive each moment fresh, as if for the first time. Think of a child encountering something new, eyes wide with curiosity, no preconceptions about what should happen, simply open to what is. Mindfulness cultivates this quality of openness. When you're open to the present moment, you're not fighting with reality, you're not arguing with what is, you're simply aware and accepting. This doesn't mean you become passive or stop working to improve things, but rather that you start from a place of clear seeing rather than resistance. You meet this moment, whatever it contains, with a welcoming awareness. Pain can be present without adding suffering through resistance. Joy can be present without clinging to make it stay. Each moment is received as it comes, held lightly, and released as it passes. As your breathing becomes even more gentle and easy, we explore a fundamental practice of mindfulness. Observing thoughts without judgment cultivates equanimity. Most of us spend our lives caught up in our thoughts, believing them, following them wherever they lead, rarely stepping back to simply observe the thinking process itself. But in mindfulness practice, we learn to watch thoughts the way we might watch birds flying across the sky. A thought arises, perhaps a worry about tomorrow or a memory from yesterday, and rather than getting pulled into the story of the thought, we simply notice it. There's a thought about the future. There's a memory arising. There's a judgment forming. We don't say this thought is good or bad. We shouldn't be thinking this, we just observe with a gentle, non-judgmental awareness. This practice cultivates equanimity, a balanced, even quality of mind that remains steady through changing experiences. When you can observe your thoughts without being swept away by them, without judging yourself for having them, you develop a profound inner stability. The thoughts continue to come and go, but you're no longer their prisoner. You're the awareness in which thoughts appear, not the thoughts themselves. Resting in stillness, we consider how awareness illuminates our inner landscape. Awareness allows recognition of patterns in mind and behavior. When you begin to pay attention, really pay attention to your moment-to-moment experience, you start to notice patterns you've never seen before. You might notice that every time you feel criticized, there's a familiar tightening in your chest and a defensive thought that arises. You might observe that when you're tired, your mind becomes more negative, interpreting neutral events through a darker lens. You might see how certain situations trigger old conditioning, how you respond in ways you learned long ago, perhaps in childhood, ways that might not serve you anymore. These patterns have been running in the background of your life, invisible but influential, shaping your reactions and your experience. Awareness brings them into the light. And once you see a pattern clearly, once you recognize it as it's happening, you're no longer completely under its control. You have a moment of choice, a space of freedom where you can respond differently. This is one of the great gifts of mindfulness. It reveals the machinery of our conditioning so we can work with it consciously rather than being mechanically driven by it. Breathing slowly and peacefully, we explore how mindfulness strengthens our capacity to be present. Practicing mindfulness strengthens focus and emotional regulation. Like any skill, mindfulness improves with practice. Each time you notice that your mind has wandered and gently bring it back to the present, you're strengthening your capacity for focus. Each time you observe a strong emotion without being overwhelmed by it or pushing it away, you're developing emotional regulation. The mind is trainable. Through consistent practice, you become better at sustaining attention, better at noticing when you've become distracted, better at returning to presence. Your emotional life becomes less reactive, less turbulent. You still feel the full range of human emotions, but you're not at their mercy. You can feel anger without lashing out. You can feel sadness without drowning in it. You can feel joy without clinging desperately to keep it. This doesn't happen overnight, it's a gradual development, but with patient practice, you find that you're more able to stay present, more able to respond wisely rather than react blindly, more able to navigate the ups and downs of life with grace and equilibrium. As you sink deeper towards sleep, consider the central importance of this practice. Mindfulness is a central tool for ethical and spiritual growth. The Buddha taught mindfulness as one of the essential elements of the path to liberation. Why is it so central? Because mindfulness is the foundation for everything else. You cannot develop wisdom without awareness, because wisdom requires seeing things as they are. You cannot cultivate compassion without mindfulness, because compassion requires being present to suffering, your own and others, without turning away. You cannot live ethically without awareness, because ethical action requires seeing the consequences of your choices, understanding cause and effect in your behavior. Mindfulness illuminates the path. It shows you when you're acting from greed, hatred, or delusion, and it shows you when you're acting from generosity, love, and wisdom. It creates the space for conscious choice rather than automatic reaction. Every spiritual quality, every ethical virtue, grows more easily in the soil of mindfulness. It's not that mindfulness alone is sufficient for complete liberation, but it is necessary. It is the ground from which all other practices grow. Relaxing more fully, breathing naturally, we explore how mindfulness liberates us from a particular form of suffering. Present awareness helps break free from anxiety about the future. So much of human suffering happens not in the present moment, but in our thoughts about the future. We worry about what might happen. We rehearse difficult conversations that haven't occurred yet. We imagine worst-case scenarios. We feel anxious about uncertainties we cannot control. All of this anxiety lives in thoughts about a future that doesn't exist, that may never exist in the form we're imagining. When you bring your attention back to the present moment, when you return to the simple reality of right now, you often discover that right now is actually okay. Right now, in this moment, you're breathing, you're alive, you're here. The future hasn't arrived yet, and when it does arrive, it will arrive as another present moment, which you'll meet when it comes. This doesn't mean you never plan or prepare for the future, but you do your planning from a place of present awareness rather than anxious projection. You take wise action in this moment, and then you release your grip on controlling outcomes that haven't manifested yet. This practice of returning to the present again and again breaks the cycle of future-oriented anxiety and brings you back to the only moment in which you can actually live, which is now. Drifting peacefully, we contemplate what sustained awareness reveals. Awareness reveals the transitory nature of experiences. When you sit quietly and simply observe your experience, you begin to notice something profound. Everything changes. Sensations arise and fade. Thoughts appear and dissolve. Emotions swell and subside. Sounds come and go. Even what seems solid and stable, your body, your sense of self, when observed closely, reveals itself as a flowing process of constant change. Nothing stays. Nothing is fixed. This isn't an intellectual understanding, but a direct perception that comes through sustained mindfulness. You watch a pleasant sensation arise, peak, and fade away. You observe a difficult emotion that felt like it would last forever gradually weaken and disappear. You notice how the mind's content is constantly shifting, like a river that looks like the same river but is actually made of ever-changing water. This direct seeing of transitoriness is liberating. You stop trying to freeze moments in time. You stop believing that any state, pleasant or unpleasant, is permanent. You learn to hold everything more lightly, knowing that this too shall pass. This understanding brings a natural equanimity, a peace that comes from aligning yourself with the way things actually are rather than fighting against the fundamental nature of reality. Finally, as you rest in deepening peace, we consider a practical benefit of mindfulness. Mindfulness enhances clarity in decision-making. When your mind is clouded by reactivity, by unexamined assumptions, by emotional turbulence, by constant distraction, it's difficult to make wise decisions. You might act impulsively from anger or fear. You might be driven by unconscious patterns. You might miss important information because you're not really paying attention. But mindfulness clears this cloudiness. When you're present and aware, you see situations more clearly. You notice your own biases and reactive patterns as they arise, which gives you the chance to question them rather than simply act from them. You can pause between stimulus and response, creating space for wisdom to emerge. You're more able to consider different perspectives, to weigh options thoughtfully, to sense into what feels right rather than just defaulting to habit. This doesn't mean you never make mistakes, but you make them less frequently, and when you do, you're more likely to learn from them because you're paying attention. The clarity that comes from mindfulness infuses all aspects of your life, helping you navigate relationships, work, personal challenges, and opportunities with greater wisdom and skillfulness. Rest now in this awareness, in this gentle mindfulness that requires no effort, only a soft attention to what is. Let these teachings settle into your consciousness like pebbles sinking through clear water, finding their natural resting place in the depths. There is nothing to achieve, nothing to become, only this moment of being, this breath, this peaceful awareness. May mindfulness grow naturally in your life. May you find freedom in presence. May you rest in the clarity that comes from simply seeing what is. As we continue our peaceful journey together, allow your body to become even more relaxed, even more at ease. Feel yourself sinking into comfort, into safety, into this moment of rest. Let go of any remaining tension, any holding, any effort. Here in this quiet space, we explore the beautiful connection between happiness and how we live our lives, between inner peace and outer conduct. We begin with a teaching that may seem counterintuitive at first. True happiness comes from detachment from desires. In our culture, we're often told that happiness comes from getting what we want, from fulfilling our desires, from acquiring and achieving. But the Buddha taught something quite different. He observed that desire itself is a form of suffering, a constant state of lacking, of feeling that this moment is not enough, that we need something else to be complete. When we're caught in desire, we're always reaching for the next thing, and even when we get it, the satisfaction is temporary, soon replaced by a new desire. True happiness, lasting contentment, comes not from fulfilling every desire but from loosening our grip on desire itself. This is detachment, not a cold withdrawal from life, but a warm engagement with life as it is, rather than constant craving for life to be different. When you're not driven by desire, when you can enjoy what's present without desperately grasping at it, when you can let things come and go naturally, you discover a happiness that doesn't depend on external conditions, a joy that arises from inner freedom rather than outer acquisition. Breathing gently, settling deeper, we explore a simple practice that transforms our experience. Cultivating gratitude enhances well-being. When you train your mind to notice what's good, what's working, what you already have rather than what's missing, something shifts in your whole experience of life. Gratitude is like adjusting the lens through which you see the world. The same life that felt lacking can suddenly feel abundant when viewed through grateful eyes. You might notice the miracle of your breath, how your body breathes you without any effort on your part. You might feel grateful for clean water, for shelter, for a kind word someone offered, for the capacity to see or hear or move. Gratitude doesn't require that everything be perfect. You can feel grateful for small goods even in the midst of difficulty. And research has shown what contemplatives have known for centuries, that regularly practicing gratitude actually changes your brain, making you more resilient, more positive, more satisfied with life. It's not about denying problems or pretending everything is wonderful. but about training your attention to rest on what nourishes you rather than dwelling exclusively on what troubles you. This shift in attention is itself a pathway to happiness. As you rest peacefully, we contemplate the power of the heart. Compassion strengthens social and personal harmony. When you meet others with compassion, with a genuine care for their well-being, with kindness even when they're difficult, something beautiful happens in your relationships and in your own heart. Compassion dissolves the walls between us and them, between self and other. It helps you see that everyone is struggling in their own way, that everyone wants to be happy and free from suffering, just like you. This understanding naturally leads to more harmonious interactions. Instead of reacting to someone's harshness with more harshness, you might recognize their pain and respond with patience. Instead of competing or comparing, you might genuinely celebrate another's success. And within yourself, compassion brings a deep sense of connection and meaning. The self-focused mind is often an unhappy mind, caught in endless self-concern. But when you extend your care outward, when you feel moved by the suffering of others and act to reduce it, you find a happiness that comes from being part of something larger than your small self. Compassion doesn't drain you. It actually fills you with a sense of purpose and connection that nothing else can provide. Breathing slowly and naturally, we discover the foundation of peace. Inner peace arises from ethical conduct and self-discipline. There's a deep relationship between how you act in the world and the quality of your inner life. When you live ethically, when you speak truthfully, when you act with integrity, when you treat others with respect, you create a clear conscience. There's no inner turmoil from regret, no anxiety about being discovered, no shame weighing on your heart. Your mind becomes naturally more peaceful, and self-discipline, which might sound restrictive, is actually liberating. When you have the discipline to not always follow every impulse, to choose wisely rather than habitually, to refrain from actions that would harm yourself or others, you create an inner stability and strength. You're not at the mercy of every passing mood or craving. You become someone you can trust, someone you can respect. This inner alignment, where your actions match your values, where you're living with integrity, brings a peace that no external circumstances can provide. You might face difficulties, challenges, losses, but underneath it all, there's a fundamental peace that comes from knowing you're living in a way you can be proud of, in a way that doesn't create unnecessary suffering. Drifting deeper into tranquility, we explore the gift of clarity. Mental clarity reduces suffering from craving and aversion. When your mind is clouded, when you're not seeing clearly, you suffer in two primary ways, through craving and aversion. Craving is the reaching toward what you want, the feeling that you must have this thing, this experience, this person in order to be happy. Aversion is the pushing away of what you don't want, the resistance to discomfort, pain, or unpleasant experiences. Both of these create suffering because both are based on not seeing clearly. When your mind is clear, when you see that craving brings suffering, that the things you crave won't ultimately satisfy you in the way you hope, the craving naturally weakens. When you see clearly that aversion intensifies pain, that resistance to discomfort creates more suffering than the discomfort itself, the aversion softens. Mental clarity comes from mindfulness, from meditation, from ethical living, from all the practices we've been exploring. And as your mind becomes clearer, you find yourself suffering less because you're no longer adding layers of craving and aversion on top of your direct experience. You can meet life as it is with much less struggle, much less internal warfare. Settling into deeper rest, we contemplate a quality of profound peace. Equanimity develops through acceptance of impermanence. Equanimity is a beautiful quality of balance and evenness of mind, a capacity to remain steady through life's inevitable ups and downs. It develops naturally as you deepen your understanding of impermanence. When you truly accept that all things change, that nothing lasts, that every condition is temporary, you stop being shocked by change. You expect it, you're not surprised by it, and you're less disturbed by it. A pleasant experience arises and you enjoy it, but you know it will pass, so you don't desperately cling to it. An unpleasant experience arises and you acknowledge it, but you know it will pass, so you don't fall into despair. This doesn't mean you become cold or unfeeling, but rather that your feelings are held in a larger context of understanding. You feel joy, but you're not intoxicated by it. You feel sorrow, but you're not destroyed by it. You remain present and engaged with life while also maintaining a wise perspective that comes from understanding the impermanent nature of all experiences. This equanimity is one of the highest forms of happiness, a peace that endures through changing circumstances because it's not dependent on circumstances being a particular way. Breathing effortlessly, naturally, we explore the joy of giving. Generosity fosters joy and reduces selfishness. There's something deeply satisfying about giving, about offering your time, your resources, your attention, your care to others without expecting anything in return. True generosity, giving freely from the heart, creates joy in both the giver and the receiver. When you're generous, you're practicing non-attachment. You're loosening your grip on what you have, recognizing that happiness doesn't come from accumulating and hoarding but from sharing and connecting. Generosity also directly counters selfishness, that contracted state of mind where everything is measured in terms of me and mine. When you're generous, you expand beyond self-concern. You recognize that others matter, that their happiness and well-being are as important as your own. This expansion of care is itself a form of freedom and joy. You might start with small acts of generosity, sharing food, offering a smile, giving your full attention to someone who needs to be heard. As you practice, generosity becomes a natural expression of your character, a way of being in the world that creates happiness not through getting but through giving. Resting peacefully, we consider a virtue that sustains us through difficulty. Patience allows for enduring life's challenges calmly. Life inevitably brings challenges, frustrations, delays, disappointments, and difficulties. Without patience, these experiences create tremendous suffering. We become angry, agitated, resentful. We fight against what is, demanding that reality be different than it is right now. But patience is a form of wisdom and strength. It's the capacity to accept that some things take time, that we cannot control everything, that not everything happens according to our schedule or preferences. Patience doesn't mean passive resignation or allowing yourself to be mistreated, but rather a calm acceptance of the fact that life unfolds at its own pace. When you're patient, you can be in a frustrating situation without adding the suffering of frustration on top of the situation itself. You can endure difficulty without falling apart. You can wait without torment. Patience is cultivated through practice, through all the small moments when you choose to breathe and accept rather than resist and rage. Each time you practice patience, you strengthen this capacity, and over time, you find that you can meet life's challenges with much more calm and grace. This patience itself becomes a source of happiness, because you're no longer at war with the pace and unfolding of your life. As you sink deeper towards sleep, we return to a fundamental truth. Happiness is cultivated inwardly, not externally. This is perhaps one of the most important teachings about happiness. We spend so much energy trying to arrange external circumstances, believing that if we could just get the right job, the right relationship, the right amount of money, the right possessions, then we would be happy. But happiness doesn't work that way. External circumstances have surprisingly little correlation with lasting happiness. You've probably noticed this in your own life, how you can have everything you thought you wanted and still feel dissatisfied, or how you can find moments of genuine joy in the simplest circumstances. True happiness is an inside job. It's cultivated through practices like mindfulness, compassion, gratitude, and ethical living. It comes from the quality of your mind and heart, not from the arrangement of your external world. This doesn't mean external circumstances don't matter at all. Severe poverty or chronic pain certainly create challenges. But it means that the primary source of lasting happiness lies within your own mind, in how you relate to your experience rather than in the experiences themselves. This is incredibly empowering because it means your happiness is largely in your own hands. You can cultivate it through practice, through wise choices, through training your mind and heart. Finally, as you rest in complete peace, we contemplate the foundation of contentment. Living ethically creates a stable foundation for lasting contentment. All the practices and qualities we've explored, detachment from desire, gratitude, compassion, mental clarity, equanimity, generosity, patience, all of these rest on a foundation of ethical living. When you live ethically, when your actions align with values like non-harming, truthfulness, integrity, and kindness, you create the conditions for deep and lasting contentment. Ethics is not about following rules imposed from outside, but about recognizing the natural laws of cause and effect. Harmful actions create suffering, both for others and for yourself. Beneficial actions create well-being, both for others and for yourself. When you live ethically, you're not creating problems, conflicts, regrets, or shame that would disturb your peace. You're living in a way that allows happiness to naturally arise. Your relationships are more harmonious because people trust you. Your mind is more peaceful because your conscience is clear. Your life has meaning and direction because you're guided by values rather than just drifting through reactions and impulses. This ethical foundation is like good soil in which all other positive qualities can grow. It's the ground of lasting contentment, a contentment that doesn't depend on everything going your way but comes from knowing you're living with integrity, with care, with wisdom. Rest now in this understanding. Let these reflections on happiness and ethical living settle gently into your awareness. There is no striving needed, no effort to make, only this peaceful moment, this breath, this letting go. May true happiness arise in your life from the inside out. May your actions be guided by wisdom and compassion. May you find the lasting contentment that comes from living well. As we continue this gentle exploration, let yourself become even more relaxed, even more at peace. Feel your breath flowing naturally, effortlessly. Notice how your body knows exactly how to rest, how to release, how to simply be. In this quiet space, we turn our attention to the core teachings of the Buddha, the fundamental insights that illuminate the path to freedom. We begin with the Buddha's first and most foundational teaching. The Four Noble Truths diagnose the nature and cause of suffering. When the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree and awakened to the nature of reality, he organized his insight into four essential truths, approaching human suffering the way a skilled physician approaches illness. The first truth acknowledges that suffering exists, that life contains pain, dissatisfaction, stress, and unease. This isn't pessimism but honest recognition. The second truth identifies the cause of suffering, tracing it to craving, to our constant grasping at pleasure and pushing away of pain, to our thirst for existence and becoming. The third truth offers hope, declaring that suffering can end, that liberation is possible. And the fourth truth prescribes the medicine, outlining the eightfold path that leads to the end of suffering. Together, these four truths provide a complete diagnosis of the human condition. They don't just describe suffering abstractly, they show you where it comes from, they reveal its root cause in your own mind, in the patterns of craving and aversion that you can learn to observe and transform. This is deeply practical wisdom, not philosophy for its own sake, but a map for finding your way out of suffering. Breathing softly, settling deeper into rest, we continue with the hopeful dimension of this teaching. The Four Noble Truths outline the path to end suffering. The fourth noble truth is the path itself, 8 interconnected practices that support and reinforce each other. Right view, seeing things as they truly are. Right intention, cultivating thoughts of renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness. Right speech, speaking truthfully, kindly, and helpfully. Right action, acting ethically, avoiding harm. Right livelihood, making a living in ways that don't cause suffering. Right effort, cultivating positive mental states and abandoning negative ones. Right mindfulness, maintaining awareness of body, feelings, mind, and phenomena. Right concentration, developing deep states of focused meditation. These 8 aspects work together like the spokes of a wheel, each strengthening the others. When you speak truthfully, your mind becomes clearer for meditation. When you meditate, you gain insight that guides more skillful action. When you act ethically, your conscience is clear and concentration comes more easily. This is not a linear path you complete step by step, but a comprehensive way of living that gradually transforms your entire being, leading you from suffering toward liberation, from confusion toward wisdom, from bondage toward freedom. Resting peacefully, we explore a profound teaching about the nature of existence itself. Dependent arising explains how phenomena exist in relation to each other. Nothing exists independently in isolation by itself. Everything arises in dependence on causes and conditions. Your body exists in dependence on food, water, air, your parents, their parents, going back through countless generations. Your thoughts arise in dependence on your experiences, your culture, your language, the specific circumstances of this moment. Even your sense of self arises dependently, constructed from memories, sensations, perceptions, mental formations, all of which are themselves dependently arisen. This teaching reveals that there are no separate, independent things, only processes arising in relationship to other processes. When you see this clearly, many forms of suffering dissolve. You realize you cannot control everything because everything is interconnected, arising from vast webs of causation beyond your individual will. You see that clinging to any phenomenon is like trying to grasp flowing water, because everything you're grasping at is itself arising and passing away in dependence on conditions. This understanding of dependent arising is one of the Buddha's most original insights, revealing the interconnected, process-based nature of all reality. As you drift deeper toward sleep, we contemplate the goal of Buddhist practice. Nirvana is the end of greed, hatred, and delusion. In the Buddhist tradition, nirvana is not some distant heaven or mystical realm, but a transformation that happens right here, in this mind, in this life. It's described as the complete ending of the 3 poisons that contaminate consciousness and create suffering. Greed, that grasping, wanting quality of mind that's never satisfied, always reaching for more. Hatred, that pushing away, that aversion, anger, and ill will toward what we don't want. And delusion, that fundamental ignorance of how things really are, that fog of misunderstanding that obscures clear seeing. When these 3 are fully extinguished, what remains is nirvana, a state of complete peace, freedom, and clarity. The mind no longer burns with the fires of craving and aversion. Consciousness rests in its natural clarity, no longer distorted by greed, hatred, or delusion. This is the ultimate happiness, not the temporary pleasure of getting what you want, but the profound peace of no longer being driven by wanting itself, of no longer resisting what is, of seeing clearly without the distortions of ignorance. Breathing naturally, effortlessly, we explore another dimension of this liberation. Nirvana marks freedom from rebirth and suffering. In the Buddhist cosmology, beings are caught in samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, driven by karma, by the momentum of their actions and mental patterns. Each life is conditioned by previous actions, and each action creates conditions for future experience. This cycle continues endlessly until the causes are removed. Nirvana is the ending of this cycle, the final liberation. When greed, hatred, and delusion are completely extinguished, there's no more fuel for the fire of becoming, no more craving that drives the cycle forward. Whether you interpret rebirth literally or metaphorically, as actual reincarnation or as the moment-to-moment recreation of self, the teaching points to a profound freedom. Freedom from being driven by unconscious patterns. Freedom from the suffering that comes from constantly becoming, constantly trying to establish and defend a self. Freedom from the endless cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. This freedom is available, the Buddha taught, to anyone willing to walk the path, to anyone willing to look clearly at suffering and its causes and to undertake the practices that lead to liberation. We begin with the Buddha's first and most foundational teaching. The Four Noble Truths diagnose the nature and cause of suffering. When the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree and awakened to the nature of reality, he organized his insight into four essential truths, approaching human suffering the way a skilled physician approaches illness. The first truth acknowledges that suffering exists, that life contains pain, dissatisfaction, stress, and unease. This isn't pessimism but honest recognition. The second truth identifies the cause of suffering, tracing it to craving, to our constant grasping at pleasure and pushing away of pain, to our thirst for existence and becoming. The third truth offers hope, declaring that suffering can end, that liberation is possible. And the fourth truth prescribes the medicine, outlining the eightfold path that leads to the end of suffering. Together, these four truths provide a complete diagnosis of the human condition. They don't just describe suffering abstractly, they show you where it comes from, they reveal its root cause in your own mind, in the patterns of craving and aversion that you can learn to observe and transform. This is deeply practical wisdom, not philosophy for its own sake, but a map for finding your way out of suffering. Breathing softly, settling deeper into rest, we continue with the hopeful dimension of this teaching. The Four Noble Truths outline the path to end suffering. The fourth noble truth is the path itself, 8 interconnected practices that support and reinforce each other. Right view, seeing things as they truly are. Right intention, cultivating thoughts of renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness. Right speech, speaking truthfully, kindly, and helpfully. Right action, acting ethically, avoiding harm. Right livelihood, making a living in ways that don't cause suffering. Right effort, cultivating positive mental states and abandoning negative ones. Right mindfulness, maintaining awareness of body, feelings, mind, and phenomena. Right concentration, developing deep states of focused meditation. These 8 aspects work together like the spokes of a wheel, each strengthening the others. When you speak truthfully, your mind becomes clearer for meditation. When you meditate, you gain insight that guides more skillful action. When you act ethically, your conscience is clear and concentration comes more easily. This is not a linear path you complete step by step, but a comprehensive way of living that gradually transforms your entire being, leading you from suffering toward liberation, from confusion toward wisdom, from bondage toward freedom. Resting peacefully, we explore a profound teaching about the nature of existence itself. Dependent arising explains how phenomena exist in relation to each other. Nothing exists independently in isolation by itself. Everything arises in dependence on causes and conditions. Your body exists in dependence on food, water, air, your parents, their parents, going back through countless generations. Your thoughts arise in dependence on your experiences, your culture, your language, the specific circumstances of this moment. Even your sense of self arises dependently, constructed from memories, sensations, perceptions, mental formations, all of which are themselves dependently arisen. This teaching reveals that there are no separate, independent things, only processes arising in relationship to other processes. When you see this clearly, many forms of suffering dissolve. You realize you cannot control everything because everything is interconnected, arising from vast webs of causation beyond your individual will. You see that clinging to any phenomenon is like trying to grasp flowing water, because everything you're grasping at is itself arising and passing away in dependence on conditions. This understanding of dependent arising is one of the Buddha's most original insights, revealing the interconnected, process-based nature of all reality. As you drift deeper toward sleep, we contemplate the goal of Buddhist practice. Nirvana is the end of greed, hatred, and delusion. In the Buddhist tradition, nirvana is not some distant heaven or mystical realm, but a transformation that happens right here, in this mind, in this life. It's described as the complete ending of the three poisons that contaminate consciousness and create suffering. Greed, that grasping, wanting quality of mind that's never satisfied, always reaching for more. Hatred, that pushing away, that aversion, anger, and ill will toward what we don't want. And delusion, that fundamental ignorance of how things really are, that fog of misunderstanding that obscures clear seeing. When these three are fully extinguished, what remains is nirvana, a state of complete peace, freedom, and clarity. The mind no longer burns with the fires of craving and aversion. Consciousness rests in its natural clarity, no longer distorted by greed, hatred, or delusion. This is the ultimate happiness, not the temporary pleasure of getting what you want, but the profound peace of no longer being driven by wanting itself, of no longer resisting what is, of seeing clearly without the distortions of ignorance. Breathing naturally, effortlessly, we explore another dimension of this liberation. Nirvana marks freedom from rebirth and suffering. In the Buddhist cosmology, beings are caught in samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, driven by karma, by the momentum of their actions and mental patterns. Each life is conditioned by previous actions, and each action creates conditions for future experience. This cycle continues endlessly until the causes are removed. Nirvana is the ending of this cycle, the final liberation. When greed, hatred, and delusion are completely extinguished, there's no more fuel for the fire of becoming, no more craving that drives the cycle forward. Whether you interpret rebirth literally or metaphorically, as actual reincarnation or as the moment-to-moment recreation of self, the teaching points to a profound freedom. Freedom from being driven by unconscious patterns. Freedom from the suffering that comes from constantly becoming, constantly trying to establish and defend a self. Freedom from the endless cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. This freedom is available, the Buddha taught, to anyone willing to walk the path, to anyone willing to look clearly at suffering and its causes and to undertake the practices that lead to liberation. Rest now in these profound truths. Let them work on your understanding at a level deeper than words. There is nothing you need to figure out right now, nothing you need to grasp or hold. Simply rest in the peace of this moment, breathing naturally, releasing into sleep. May wisdom arise in your direct experience. May you see things as they truly are. May you find the freedom that comes from understanding. As we journey deeper into rest and understanding, allow yourself to release completely. Feel the comfort beneath you, the gentle rhythm of your breathing, the peace of this quiet moment. There is nowhere to go, nothing to accomplish, only this tender exploration of the path that leads to freedom. Let these words wash over you like a gentle stream, carrying you toward deeper peace. We begin by returning to the heart of Buddhist practice, the path the Buddha laid out for all who seek liberation. The Eightfold Path guides ethical, mental, and wisdom development. This path is not a linear sequence you complete step by step, but rather 8 interconnected dimensions of a wise life, each supporting and enriching the others. The path is traditionally divided into 3 trainings. Ethical training includes right speech, right action, and right livelihood, the practices that govern how you interact with the world. Mental training includes right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, the practices that cultivate and purify the mind. And wisdom training includes right view and right intention, the understanding and motivation that guide everything else. These three trainings work together like the three legs of a stool, each essential, each supporting the others. When you live ethically, your mind becomes naturally clearer and more peaceful, making meditation easier. When you meditate, you gain insights that help you live more ethically. When you understand reality correctly, both your actions and your mental practice are guided by wisdom. This is a complete path, addressing every dimension of human life, transforming you gradually from a state of suffering and confusion to a state of peace and clarity. Breathing softly, settling into stillness, we explore the foundation of the path. Right view cultivates understanding of reality. Everything begins with how you see, with your understanding of what's true. Right view means seeing reality as it actually is, not through the distorting lenses of wishful thinking, denial, or confusion. It means understanding the Four Noble Truths: that suffering exists, that it has a cause, that it can end, and that there's a path to its ending. It means seeing the three characteristics of existence: that all things are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and without a permanent self. It means understanding karma, that actions have consequences, that wholesome actions lead to well-being and unwholesome actions lead to suffering. Right view is not blind belief but clear seeing based on investigation and direct experience. When your view is correct, when you see things as they are, all your other choices and practices naturally align with reality. You stop fighting against how things are. You stop seeking happiness where it cannot be found. You understand what leads to suffering and what leads to freedom, and you naturally orient your life toward freedom. Right view is like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly you can see where you're going, what obstacles are in your way, and how to move forward skillfully. Resting peacefully, we turn to what motivates and directs our actions. Right intention shapes ethical and compassionate action. Intention is the quality of heart and mind that precedes action, the motivation behind what you do and say. Right intention has three aspects: the intention of renunciation, which means being willing to let go, to turn away from greed and excessive attachment to sensual pleasures. The intention of goodwill, which means cultivating kindness, friendliness, and genuine care for the well-being of others. And the intention of harmlessness, which means actively wishing not to cause pain or suffering to any living being. These intentions shape everything that follows. When your intention is pure, when you're genuinely motivated by wisdom and compassion rather than by greed, hatred, or delusion, your actions naturally become more skillful. You can perform the same outward action with very different intentions, and those intentions will shape both the quality of the action and its effects on your mind and heart. When you cultivate right intention, you're working at the root level, purifying the source from which thoughts, words, and actions flow. This is deep transformative work, gradually shifting your entire orientation from self-centered craving toward wisdom and compassion. As you drift deeper toward sleep, we explore how we use our words. Right speech prevents harm through words. Speech is powerful. Words can heal or wound, illuminate or confuse, connect or divide. Right speech means using words wisely and carefully. It means abstaining from lying, from speaking what is not true. It means avoiding divisive speech, words that create conflict, that turn people against each other, that gossip or spread rumors. It means refraining from harsh speech, from words spoken in anger or contempt, from language that demeans or attacks. And it means avoiding idle chatter, excessive talk that serves no purpose, that wastes time and energy without adding value. Positively, right speech means speaking truth, speaking words that are beneficial and timely, speaking in ways that promote understanding and harmony. Before you speak, the Buddha suggested, ask yourself 3 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? If the answer to all 3 is yes, then speak. If not, remain silent. This practice of right speech gradually purifies your communication, making your words trustworthy, your presence peaceful, your relationships more harmonious. You become someone whose words carry weight because people know you speak carefully and truthfully. Breathing naturally, effortlessly, we consider how we move through the world. Right action fosters moral behavior. Actions, like words, have consequences. The Buddha outlined 5 basic precepts that guide right action. Not killing, which means respecting all life, being gentle, avoiding harm to living beings. Not stealing, which means respecting what belongs to others, being generous rather than taking what isn't freely given. Not engaging in sexual misconduct, which means respecting relationships, honoring commitments, not using sexuality in ways that cause harm. Not lying, which overlaps with right speech but emphasizes honesty in all your dealings. And not taking intoxicants that cloud the mind and lead to carelessness. These are not rigid commandments but training guidelines, practices that help you live in ways that create less suffering and more well-being. When you follow these precepts, you create a life of integrity. Your conscience is clear. You can look at yourself in the mirror without shame. You can sleep peacefully without regret. Your actions align with your values, and this alignment itself is a source of happiness and peace. Right action creates the stable foundation on which all other practices rest. Settling into deeper tranquility, we explore how we sustain ourselves. Right livelihood aligns work with ethics. Most of us spend a large portion of our lives working, earning a living. The Buddha recognized that how you make your living affects your mind and your ethical development. Right livelihood means making a living in ways that don't cause harm, that don't create suffering for others or yourself. The Buddha specifically mentioned avoiding trades in weapons, in living beings like slaves or animals for slaughter, in meat, in intoxicants, and in poisons. More broadly, right livelihood means choosing work that's honest, that doesn't involve deception or exploitation, that doesn't require you to violate ethical principles. It means considering not just your own profit but the impact of your work on others and on the world. When your livelihood is aligned with your values, when you're not spending your days engaged in activities you're ashamed of or that conflict with your deepest principles, you experience a profound sense of integrity. Your work becomes part of your practice rather than something that undermines it. This doesn't mean everyone must become a monk or work in explicitly spiritual professions, but it means bringing ethical awareness to how you earn your living and making choices that support rather than contradict your path toward freedom and wisdom. Resting deeply, we turn to the quality of effort we bring to practice. Right effort cultivates wholesome qualities. Effort in Buddhist practice is not the straining, forced effort of pushing yourself relentlessly, but rather a balanced, sustainable effort guided by wisdom. Right effort has 4 aspects. First, the effort to prevent unwholesome mental states from arising, being mindful of what you expose yourself to, what situations and influences you allow into your life. Second, the effort to abandon unwholesome mental states that have already arisen, letting go of anger when it appears, releasing greed when you notice it, not feeding negative patterns. Third, the effort to cultivate wholesome mental states that haven't yet arisen, actively developing qualities like compassion, generosity, patience, mindfulness. And fourth, the effort to maintain and strengthen wholesome mental states that are already present, not letting positive qualities fade through neglect. This kind of effort is like gardening. You weed out what's harmful, you plant seeds of what's beneficial, you water and tend what's growing well. It requires attention, consistency, and wisdom about what to cultivate and what to let go. This balanced effort prevents both the laziness that makes no progress and the straining that leads to burnout. It's the middle way applied to practice itself. As you sink into peaceful stillness, we explore the practice that brings clarity. Right mindfulness develops presence and clarity. Mindfulness is the quality of being present, awake, and aware in this moment, observing experience without being lost in it, without being swept away by reactivity. The Buddha taught 4 foundations of mindfulness. Mindfulness of the body, being aware of physical sensations, posture, movement, breath. Mindfulness of feelings, noticing the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral quality of experiences as they arise. Mindfulness of mind, observing mental states, the mood and quality of consciousness itself. And mindfulness of phenomena, seeing clearly the patterns and principles that govern experience, like impermanence, like cause and effect. Through practicing these 4 foundations, you develop a continuous awareness that pervades your life. You're less often lost in thought, less often reacting mechanically, less often operating on autopilot. Instead, you're present, noticing what's happening internally and externally, able to respond with wisdom rather than just reacting from habit. This mindfulness is the heart of Buddhist practice, the quality that allows all other aspects of the path to develop. Without mindfulness, you can't see your mind clearly enough to work with it. With mindfulness, transformation becomes possible because you're awake to what needs to be cultivated and what needs to be released. Breathing slowly, naturally, we contemplate the deepening of practice. Right concentration deepens meditative insight. Concentration is the ability to gather and focus the mind, to rest attention steadily on a chosen object without being constantly distracted. In Buddhist meditation, concentration is cultivated through various techniques, often beginning with awareness of breath. As concentration develops, the mind becomes more stable, more unified, less scattered. In deep states of concentration, called jhanas, the mind becomes profoundly peaceful and clear, temporarily free from the usual turbulence of thought. These concentrated states are valuable not as ends in themselves but as tools for developing insight. When the mind is concentrated, it's powerful enough to see deeply into the nature of reality. It can observe subtle aspects of experience that a scattered mind misses. It can sustain investigation into impermanence, suffering, and non-self, seeing these truths directly rather than just thinking about them. Concentration and insight work together, concentration providing the stability and power needed for deep seeing, and insight motivating and directing the development of concentration. Together, they lead to the liberating wisdom that frees the mind from suffering. Finally, resting in complete peace, we understand how everything connects. Ethical, mental, and wisdom training are intertwined. The Eightfold Path is not 8 separate practices but 8 dimensions of one integrated way of living. Your ethical conduct supports your meditation because when you live with integrity, your mind is naturally clearer and more peaceful. Your meditation supports your ethics because as your mind becomes more clear and less reactive, you naturally act more skillfully. Your wisdom guides both your ethics and your meditation, helping you understand what's truly beneficial and what's harmful. And your ethics and meditation together give rise to deeper wisdom, because you're creating the conditions for insight to arise. This integration is one of the beautiful aspects of the Buddhist path. You're not just working on one dimension of life while ignoring others. You're engaged in a holistic transformation that addresses your actions, your words, your livelihood, your mental patterns, your understanding, your motivation, all of it together. Each element supports the others, and together they create a powerful momentum toward liberation. This is why the path works, because it addresses the whole of your being, gradually transforming you from a state of confusion and suffering to a state of clarity and peace. Rest now in the understanding of this complete path. Let these teachings settle into your awareness like seeds planted in fertile soil, needing no force to grow, only the right conditions of receptivity and time. There is nothing you must do right now, no effort required, only this gentle awareness, this peaceful breath, this moment of complete rest. May you find your way along this path. May each step bring greater clarity and peace. May you discover the freedom that comes from living wisely. As we journey deeper into rest and understanding, allow yourself to release completely. Feel the comfort beneath you, the gentle rhythm of your breathing, the peace of this quiet moment. There is nowhere to go, nothing to accomplish, only this tender exploration of the path that leads to freedom. Let these words wash over you like a gentle stream, carrying you toward deeper peace. We begin by returning to the heart of Buddhist practice, the path the Buddha laid out for all who seek liberation. The Eightfold Path guides ethical, mental, and wisdom development. This path is not a linear sequence you complete step by step, but rather 8 interconnected dimensions of a wise life, each supporting and enriching the others. The path is traditionally divided into 3 trainings. Ethical training includes right speech, right action, and right livelihood, the practices that govern how you interact with the world. Mental training includes right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, the practices that cultivate and purify the mind. And wisdom training includes right view and right intention, the understanding and motivation that guide everything else. These 3 trainings work together like the 3 legs of a stool, each essential, each supporting the others. When you live ethically, your mind becomes naturally clearer and more peaceful, making meditation easier. When you meditate, you gain insights that help you live more ethically. When you understand reality correctly, both your actions and your mental practice are guided by wisdom. This is a complete path, addressing every dimension of human life, transforming you gradually from a state of suffering and confusion to a state of peace and clarity. Breathing softly, settling into stillness, we explore the foundation of the path. Right view cultivates understanding of reality. Everything begins with how you see, with your understanding of what's true. Right view means seeing reality as it actually is, not through the distorting lenses of wishful thinking, denial, or confusion. It means understanding the 4 noble truths: that suffering exists, that it has a cause, that it can end, and that there's a path to its ending. It means seeing the 3 characteristics of existence: that all things are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and without a permanent self. It means understanding karma, that actions have consequences, that wholesome actions lead to well-being and unwholesome actions lead to suffering. Right view is not blind belief but clear seeing based on investigation and direct experience. When your view is correct, when you see things as they are, all your other choices and practices naturally align with reality. You stop fighting against how things are. You stop seeking happiness where it cannot be found. You understand what leads to suffering and what leads to freedom, and you naturally orient your life toward freedom. Right view is like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly you can see where you're going, what obstacles are in your way, and how to move forward skillfully. Resting peacefully, we turn to what motivates and directs our actions. Right intention shapes ethical and compassionate action. Intention is the quality of heart and mind that precedes action, the motivation behind what you do and say. Right intention has 3 aspects: the intention of renunciation, which means being willing to let go, to turn away from greed and excessive attachment to sensual pleasures. The intention of goodwill, which means cultivating kindness, friendliness, and genuine care for the well-being of others. And the intention of harmlessness, which means actively wishing not to cause pain or suffering to any living being. These intentions shape everything that follows. When your intention is pure, when you're genuinely motivated by wisdom and compassion rather than by greed, hatred, or delusion, your actions naturally become more skillful. You can perform the same outward action with very different intentions, and those intentions will shape both the quality of the action and its effects on your mind and heart. When you cultivate right intention, you're working at the root level, purifying the source from which thoughts, words, and actions flow. This is deep transformative work, gradually shifting your entire orientation from self-centered craving toward wisdom and compassion. As you drift deeper toward sleep, we explore how we use our words. Right speech prevents harm through words. Speech is powerful. Words can heal or wound, illuminate or confuse, connect or divide. Right speech means using words wisely and carefully. It means abstaining from lying, from speaking what is not true. It means avoiding divisive speech, words that create conflict, that turn people against each other, that gossip or spread rumors. It means refraining from harsh speech, from words spoken in anger or contempt, from language that demeans or attacks. And it means avoiding idle chatter, excessive talk that serves no purpose, that wastes time and energy without adding value. Positively, right speech means speaking truth, speaking words that are beneficial and timely, speaking in ways that promote understanding and harmony. Before you speak, the Buddha suggested ask yourself 3 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? If the answer to all 3 is yes, then speak. If not, remain silent. This practice of right speech gradually purifies your communication, making your words trustworthy, your presence peaceful, your relationships more harmonious. You become someone whose words carry weight because people know you speak carefully and truthfully. Breathing naturally, effortlessly, we consider how we move through the world. Right action fosters moral behavior. Actions, like words, have consequences. The Buddha outlined 5 basic precepts that guide right action. Not killing, which means respecting all life, being gentle, avoiding harm to living beings. Not stealing, which means respecting what belongs to others, being generous rather than taking what isn't freely given. Not engaging in sexual misconduct, which means respecting relationships, honoring commitments, not using sexuality in ways that cause harm. Not lying, which overlaps with right speech but emphasizes honesty in all your dealings. And not taking intoxicants that cloud the mind and lead to carelessness. These are not rigid commandments but training guidelines, practices that help you live in ways that create less suffering and more well-being. When you follow these precepts, you create a life of integrity. Your conscience is clear. You can look at yourself in the mirror without shame. You can sleep peacefully without regret. Your actions align with your values, and this alignment itself is a source of happiness and peace. Right action creates the stable foundation on which all other practices rest. Settling into deeper tranquility, we explore how we sustain ourselves. Right livelihood aligns work with ethics. Most of us spend a large portion of our lives working, earning a living. The Buddha recognized that how you make your living affects your mind and your ethical development. Right livelihood means making a living in ways that don't cause harm, that don't create suffering for others or yourself. The Buddha specifically mentioned avoiding trades in weapons, in living beings like slaves or animals for slaughter, in meat, in intoxicants, and in poisons. More broadly, right livelihood means choosing work that's honest, that doesn't involve deception or exploitation, that doesn't require you to violate ethical principles. It means considering not just your own profit but the impact of your work on others and on the world. When your livelihood is aligned with your values, when you're not spending your days engaged in activities you're ashamed of or that conflict with your deepest principles, you experience a profound sense of integrity. Your work becomes part of your practice rather than something that undermines it. This doesn't mean everyone must become a monk or work in explicitly spiritual professions, but it means bringing ethical awareness to how you earn your living and making choices that support rather than contradict your path toward freedom and wisdom. Resting deeply, we turn to the quality of effort we bring to practice. Right effort cultivates wholesome qualities. Effort in Buddhist practice is not the straining, forced effort of pushing yourself relentlessly, but rather a balanced, sustainable effort guided by wisdom. Right effort has 4 aspects. First, the effort to prevent unwholesome mental states from arising, being mindful of what you expose yourself to, what situations and influences you allow into your life. Second, the effort to abandon unwholesome mental states that have already arisen, letting go of anger when it appears, releasing greed when you notice it, not feeding negative patterns. Third, the effort to cultivate wholesome mental states that haven't yet arisen, actively developing qualities like compassion, generosity, patience, mindfulness. And fourth, the effort to maintain and strengthen wholesome mental states that are already present, not letting positive qualities fade through neglect. This kind of effort is like gardening. You weed out what's harmful, you plant seeds of what's beneficial, you water and tend what's growing well. It requires attention, consistency, and wisdom about what to cultivate and what to let go. This balanced effort prevents both the laziness that makes no progress and the straining that leads to burnout. It's the middle way applied to practice itself. As you sink into peaceful stillness, we explore the practice that brings clarity. Right mindfulness develops presence and clarity. Mindfulness is the quality of being present, awake, and aware in this moment, observing experience without being lost in it, without being swept away by reactivity. The Buddha taught 4 foundations of mindfulness. Mindfulness of the body, being aware of physical sensations, posture, movement, breath. Mindfulness of feelings, noticing the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral quality of experiences as they arise. Mindfulness of mind, observing mental states, the mood and quality of consciousness itself. And mindfulness of phenomena, seeing clearly the patterns and principles that govern experience, like impermanence, like cause and effect. Through practicing these 4 foundations, you develop a continuous awareness that pervades your life. You're less often lost in thought, less often reacting mechanically, less often operating on autopilot. Instead, you're present, noticing what's happening internally and externally, able to respond with wisdom rather than just reacting from habit. This mindfulness is the heart of Buddhist practice, the quality that allows all other aspects of the path to develop. Without mindfulness, you can't see your mind clearly enough to work with it. With mindfulness, transformation becomes possible because you're awake to what needs to be cultivated and what needs to be released. Breathing slowly, naturally, we contemplate the deepening of practice. Right concentration deepens meditative insight. Concentration is the ability to gather and focus the mind, to rest attention steadily on a chosen object without being constantly distracted. In Buddhist meditation, concentration is cultivated through various techniques, often beginning with awareness of breath. As concentration develops, the mind becomes more stable, more unified, less scattered. In deep states of concentration, called jhanas, the mind becomes profoundly peaceful and clear, temporarily free from the usual turbulence of thought. These concentrated states are valuable not as ends in themselves but as tools for developing insight. When the mind is concentrated, it's powerful enough to see deeply into the nature of reality. It can observe subtle aspects of experience that a scattered mind misses. It can sustain investigation into impermanence, suffering, and non-self, seeing these truths directly rather than just thinking about them. Concentration and insight work together, concentration providing the stability and power needed for deep seeing, and insight motivating and directing the development of concentration. Together, they lead to the liberating wisdom that frees the mind from suffering. Finally, resting in complete peace, we understand how everything connects. Ethical, mental, and wisdom training are intertwined. The Eightfold Path is not 8 separate practices but 8 dimensions of one integrated way of living. Your ethical conduct supports your meditation because when you live with integrity, your mind is naturally clearer and more peaceful. Your meditation supports your ethics because as your mind becomes more clear and less reactive, you naturally act more skillfully. Your wisdom guides both your ethics and your meditation, helping you understand what's truly beneficial and what's harmful. And your ethics and meditation together give rise to deeper wisdom because you're creating the conditions for insight to arise. This integration is one of the beautiful aspects of the Buddhist path. You're not just working on one dimension of life while ignoring others. You're engaged in a holistic transformation that addresses your actions, your words, your livelihood, your mental patterns, your understanding, your motivation, all of it together. Each element supports the others, and together they create a powerful momentum toward liberation. This is why the path works, because it addresses the whole of your being, gradually transforming you from a state of confusion and suffering to a state of clarity and peace. Rest now in the understanding of this complete path. Let these teachings settle into your awareness like seeds planted in fertile soil, needing no force to grow, only the right conditions of receptivity and time. There is nothing you must do right now, no effort required, only this gentle awareness, this peaceful breath, this moment of complete rest. May you find your way along this path. May each step bring greater clarity and peace. May you discover the freedom that comes from living wisely. As we continue this gentle journey into rest and understanding, allow yourself to become even more relaxed, even more at peace. Feel the weight of your body fully supported, your breath flowing effortlessly, your mind settling into stillness. In this quiet space, we explore profound teachings about action, consequence, and the unfolding of existence across time. We begin with one of the most fundamental principles in Buddhist thought. Actions have consequences that shape future experiences. This is the law of karma, a natural principle of cause and effect that operates in the moral and psychological dimensions of life, just as surely as gravity operates in the physical dimension. Every intentional action you take, every word you speak with awareness, every thought you cultivate, creates effects that ripple outward and forward into your future. Kind actions create conditions for future well-being. Harmful actions create conditions for future suffering. This isn't about reward and punishment from some external judge, but about the natural consequences of how you engage with life. When you act with generosity, you create connections, goodwill, and a habit of openness that shapes your future experiences. When you act with anger, you damage relationships, create enemies, and strengthen patterns of reactivity that will cause you future difficulty. The present moment is shaped by actions of the past. The future will be shaped by actions of the present. This understanding gives profound meaning to how you live right now, because each moment is planting seeds that will bear fruit later. You're not helpless before fate, but actively creating your future through the choices you make today. Breathing softly, settling deeper into tranquility, we explore an important clarification. Rebirth reflects intentional actions, not fate. In Buddhist understanding, what happens to you is not predetermined by some cosmic plan or arbitrary fate. You're not living out a script written before you were born. Rather, your experiences arise from the complex web of causes and conditions, including prominently your own intentional actions. The word karma literally means action, specifically intentional action. It's the intention behind what you do that creates the strongest karmic effects. An accidental harm creates different karma than a deliberate one. An action done with wisdom and compassion creates different karma than the same action done with hatred or greed. This means you have agency, you have choice, you're participating in creating your experience. Yes, you're also influenced by conditions beyond your control, by your genetics, your culture, your circumstances, but within those constraints, you're constantly choosing how to respond, and those choices matter profoundly. Rebirth, whether you understand it literally as reincarnation or metaphorically as the continuation of patterns, reflects the momentum of your intentions and actions. You're not trapped by fate, but shaped by your own choices, which means you have the power to change your trajectory by changing how you act, speak, and think. Resting peacefully, we contemplate the natural outcomes of wise choices. Positive actions lead to favorable conditions. When you act from kindness, from generosity, from wisdom, from compassion, you create favorable conditions in multiple ways. Immediately, you feel good. Acting kindly brings a natural sense of warmth and satisfaction. Others respond to you more positively, creating harmonious relationships. Your mind becomes clearer and more peaceful because you're not creating inner conflict through harmful behavior. And over time, these positive actions build momentum, strengthening wholesome qualities in your character, creating a reputation for trustworthiness and kindness, generating goodwill that returns to you in unexpected ways. In Buddhist cosmology, positive actions even influence the kind of rebirth you'll experience, leading to favorable conditions in future lives. Whether or not you believe in literal rebirth, you can observe this principle operating in your own life. People who consistently act with integrity and kindness tend to create lives characterized by peace, good relationships, and opportunities. Not because they're lucky, but because they're reaping what they've sown. This isn't about being good in order to get rewards. It's about understanding that positive actions naturally lead to positive outcomes, that this is how cause and effect works in the moral dimension of existence. As you drift deeper toward sleep, we acknowledge the flip side of this truth. Negative actions result in suffering or difficulty. Just as positive actions create favorable conditions, negative actions create unfavorable ones. When you act from greed, taking what isn't freely given, you create mistrust, damage relationships, and strengthen patterns of grasping that will never bring satisfaction. When you act from hatred, harming others with actions or words, you create enemies, guilt, shame, and reinforce patterns of anger that poison your own mind. When you act from delusion, making choices based on misunderstanding reality, you create confusion and problems that arise from not seeing clearly. The suffering that comes from negative actions isn't divine punishment but natural consequence. Lie and people stop trusting you. Harm others and they defend themselves or retaliate. Act carelessly and you create accidents and problems. Cultivate anger, and your mind becomes a painful place to live. Over time, negative actions create a momentum of difficulty, a character marked by unwholesome qualities, a life characterized by conflict and dissatisfaction. Understanding this, you're motivated to be careful with your actions, not from fear of punishment but from clear seeing of cause and effect, from genuine care for your own well-being and the well-being of others. Breathing naturally, effortlessly, we explore traditional Buddhist cosmology. Rebirth occurs across many realms based on karma. In Buddhist teaching, existence is not just this human life on earth, but includes many possible realms of rebirth, each reflecting different karmic conditions. These realms can be understood literally as actual places of rebirth, or metaphorically as psychological states and experiences available even within one lifetime. The realms include hells, animal realms, hungry ghost realms, human realm, and various divine or heavenly realms. The realm into which a being is reborn reflects the quality and momentum of their karma, their habitual mental states and actions. Someone dominated by hatred and cruelty might be reborn in a hell realm, whether you understand that as an actual place of intense suffering or as the psychological hell of extreme rage and pain. Someone dominated by animal-like instinct, acting without much reflection or moral awareness, might be reborn in an animal realm. Someone characterized by insatiable craving might experience existence as a hungry ghost. Someone with balanced karma, both positive and negative, might be born human. And someone with very refined, virtuous karma might be reborn in divine realms of great pleasure and peace. This cosmology serves as a teaching tool, illustrating how different mental patterns create different experiential realities. Settling into stillness, we contemplate the realm of greatest suffering. Hells symbolize suffering caused by negative actions. The Buddhist hell realms are not eternal, not places of permanent damnation, but temporary states of intense suffering resulting from severe negative karma, particularly from actions rooted in hatred, cruelty, and anger. These hells are described in vivid, sometimes terrifying imagery: hot hells of fire and cold hells of ice. Places where beings experience the consequences of the harm they've caused multiplied and reflected back at them. Whether you take these descriptions literally or see them as metaphors for psychological states, they point to real experiences of suffering that can arise from destructive patterns. Think of the hell of intense rage, where the mind burns with hatred, where every moment is torment, where there's no peace or relief. Think of the hell of guilt and shame from terrible actions, the psychological torture of knowing you've caused severe harm. These are not punishments imposed from outside but natural results of extreme negative karma. The teaching of hell realms serves as a warning about where certain patterns of behavior and mind can lead, but also offers hope, because these states are not permanent. Even the longest-lasting hell eventually ends when the karma is exhausted, and the being can move on to other realms, other experiences, eventually back to opportunities for learning and liberation. Resting deeply, we reflect on another realm of limitation. Animal realms reflect instinctual limitations. The animal realm represents existence dominated by basic instinct, by immediate needs and drives, without the capacity for reflection, moral understanding, or spiritual development. Animals live in the present moment, driven by hunger, fear, territoriality, and reproduction, without the ability to understand cause and effect in sophisticated ways, or to make choices based on wisdom and compassion. From a metaphorical perspective, you might experience the animal realm within this human life when you're operating on pure instinct, reacting without thinking, driven by basic urges without reflection or restraint. The animal realm shows what happens when ignorance dominates, when there's no awareness of larger patterns or deeper truths. Beings in this realm suffer from being at the mercy of their environment and their instincts, unable to work toward liberation because they lack the understanding necessary for spiritual practice. This is one reason why human birth is considered precious in Buddhism, because humans have the capacity for reflection, for understanding cause and effect, for making conscious choices to reduce suffering and cultivate wisdom. The animal realm reminds us not to waste this capacity by living thoughtlessly, driven only by immediate desires and fears. As you sink into peaceful tranquility, we explore a realm of desperate craving. Hungry ghost realms show insatiable desire. Hungry ghosts are depicted as beings with enormous bellies and tiny mouths, eternally hungry but unable to satisfy their hunger, tormented by desires that can never be fulfilled. This realm represents the suffering that comes from intense craving, from being dominated by wanting, from never having enough, from that desperate grasping quality of mind that's always reaching for something more. You might experience the hungry ghost realm when you're caught in addiction, when no amount of the thing you crave brings satisfaction, when you're always seeking the next hit, the next purchase, the next experience, never content. Or when you're dominated by emotional hunger, desperately seeking approval, attention, or love, but unable to receive it no matter how much is offered because the emptiness inside seems bottomless. The hungry ghost realm shows the suffering of unchecked desire, of craving that has become so strong it dominates everything, creating a life of perpetual dissatisfaction and desperate seeking. This teaching points to the importance of addressing craving at its root through understanding and letting go, rather than trying to satisfy it through acquisition, which only strengthens the pattern without bringing real peace. Breathing slowly, naturally, we contemplate the precious realm we inhabit. Human life offers balance and opportunity for growth. Among all the realms, the human realm is considered uniquely precious for spiritual development. Why? Because human life contains a balance of pleasure and pain, comfort and challenge, that creates ideal conditions for learning and growth. If life were all suffering like the hell realms, you'd be too overwhelmed to practice. If life were all pleasure like some divine realms, you'd have no motivation to seek liberation. But human life contains both enough suffering to motivate you to seek freedom, enough peace to actually practice, enough challenge to develop wisdom, enough support to sustain you on the path. Humans also have the capacity for reflection, for understanding cause and effect, for making conscious choices based on values and wisdom rather than just instinct. You can consider the consequences of your actions. You can learn from experience. You can cultivate positive qualities and work to eliminate negative ones. You can understand teachings and apply them in practice. For all these reasons, human birth is considered a rare and precious opportunity, not to be wasted on distraction and thoughtless living, but used for spiritual development, for working toward liberation, for reducing suffering and cultivating wisdom. This moment, this human life, is your opportunity. Use it wisely. Finally, resting in complete peace, we reflect on realms of refinement. Divine realms reflect refined mind states and merit. In Buddhist cosmology, there are various heavenly or divine realms, places of great pleasure, beauty, peace, and long life, where beings are reborn as a result of very positive karma, particularly from the cultivation of refined mental states like loving kindness, compassion, and meditative absorption. These realms are not eternal heaven but temporary states that last as long as the positive karma that created them. Even gods in these realms eventually die and are reborn elsewhere when their merit is exhausted. Some of these divine realms correspond to specific meditative states, suggesting that you can experience these refined conditions even within this life through meditation practice. When your mind is filled with loving kindness, when you abide in deep states of meditative peace, you're touching these divine dimensions of experience. The divine realms remind us that positive actions and refined mental states create beautiful experiences of peace, joy, and ease. But they also carry a teaching that even these pleasurable states are impermanent, still part of conditioned existence, not the final liberation. As wonderful as heaven might be, it's still within samsara, still subject to change, still not the ultimate freedom of nirvana. This points to the importance of not just seeking pleasant rebirths but working toward complete liberation from all realms, all conditioned states, all suffering. Rest now in these profound reflections on karma and rebirth. Whether you understand these teachings literally or metaphorically, they point to important truths about action and consequence, about how you create your experience, about the various states of mind and being that are possible. Let these teachings settle into your awareness without needing to grasp them or figure them out. Simply rest in the peace of this moment, breathing naturally, releasing into sleep. May your actions be guided by wisdom and compassion. May you create causes for future well-being. May you work steadily toward liberation from all suffering. As we journey deeper into rest and contemplation, allow yourself to release even more completely. Feel yourself floating in the gentle darkness, supported and safe, your breath barely a whisper. In this peaceful space, we turn our gaze outward to the vast cosmos, exploring Buddhist understanding of the structure of existence itself, a vision both ancient and timeless. We begin by contemplating the sheer magnitude of reality. The universe is vast, multi-layered, and interdependent. In Buddhist cosmology, the universe is not a single simple structure but an immense, complex system of interwoven realms and dimensions. This vastness extends not just through physical space but through layers of existence, from the densest material realms to the most refined and subtle states of being. Everything within this cosmic structure is interdependent, each part connected to every other part through the web of cause and effect, through dependent arising. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything arises from conditions, exists in relationship, and passes away when conditions change. This vision of a vast, interconnected universe mirrors both ancient wisdom and modern scientific understanding of how deeply everything is related, how every particle and process is part of one great unfolding whole. As you rest here, you're part of this vast cosmos, your breath connected to the air, your body to the earth, your consciousness to the endless flow of mind throughout existence. You're a small part of something immeasurably large, and yet you contain within you the capacity to understand it, to know it, to wake up to it. Breathing softly, settling into deeper peace, we explore the primary divisions of existence. Comprises desire, form, and formless realms. Buddhist cosmology divides the universe into three great domains. The desire realm includes all beings still caught in sensual craving, from hell beings through animals, humans, and lower gods, all still desiring, still grasping at pleasures and pushing away pains. The form realm is more refined, home to beings and gods who have transcended gross sensual desire through meditation but still have subtle attachment to form, to existence itself, dwelling in states of deep meditative absorption and bliss. And the formless realm is even more refined, consisting of pure consciousness in increasingly subtle states, beings dwelling in meditation on infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, and neither perception nor non-perception. These three realms represent not just places but levels of refinement in consciousness, stages of letting go of grosser attachments. Even within this human life, you can touch these different realms through your practice. When dominated by desire, you're in the desire realm. When absorbed in refined meditation, you touch the form realms. In the deepest meditative states, you approach the formless realms. The entire cosmic structure exists within consciousness itself. Resting peacefully, we turn to the symbolic center of this vast structure. Mount Meru is the central cosmic axis. In Buddhist cosmology, Mount Meru stands at the center of the world system, an immense mountain rising from the ocean, its peak reaching into the heavens where the highest gods of the desire realm dwell. This mountain serves as the axis around which everything else is organized, the still point at the center of the turning world. Mount Meru is not primarily a physical mountain you could visit with an airplane, but a symbolic representation of the center, the axis of the cosmos. It represents that which is central, stable, around which everything revolves. You might think of it as representing the still point of awareness at the center of your own experience, that unchanging consciousness around which all changing phenomena appear and disappear, or as representing the central truth, the Dharma itself, standing firm while all conditioned things arise and pass away around it. Mount Meru anchors the cosmic vision, giving it structure and center, reminding us that even in vast, complex existence, there is a center, a point of stability and truth to which we can return. As you drift deeper toward sleep, we explore the structure surrounding this center. 7 concentric mountain rings surround Mount Meru. Radiating outward from Mount Meru are 7 rings of golden mountains, each ring separated from the next by an ocean. These mountains decrease in height as they move away from the central mountain, creating a mandala-like structure of increasing distance from the center. This image of concentric circles around a central point appears throughout Buddhist art and teaching, representing how reality is structured in layers of increasing distance from the truth, from the center. The further you move from the center, from direct perception of reality, the more confused and distorted experience becomes. Or you might see these 7 rings as representing stages of understanding, levels of realization, each bringing you closer to the center, to full awakening. This cosmological structure serves as a map not just of physical space but of spiritual geography, showing the relationship between center and periphery, between truth and confusion, between awakening and delusion. As you practice, as you develop wisdom and let go of delusion, you move inward through these rings, approaching the center, approaching direct seeing of reality as it is. Breathing naturally, effortlessly, we contemplate the waters that separate. Oceans encircle the mountains, separating realms. Between each ring of mountains lies an ocean, and beyond the outermost ring of mountains lies a vast ocean in which the 4 continents of the world float. Water, in Buddhist symbolism, often represents the flowing, changing nature of existence, the fluidity of experience. These oceans separate one realm from another, one level from another, yet they also connect everything, for all the oceans are ultimately one body of water. You cannot have sharp boundaries in water. Everything flows into everything else. This captures something essential about the Buddhist vision, that while we can speak of different realms, different levels, different states, ultimately there are no absolute divisions. Everything is part of one interconnected flow. The oceans remind us of impermanence, of constant movement and change. They remind us that separation is never absolute, that everything is connected through the flowing medium of existence itself. And they remind us of depth, for these cosmic oceans are unfathomably deep, just as the depths of consciousness and reality are beyond measure. You're floating in these cosmic waters right now, your awareness like a wave on the vast ocean of consciousness itself. Settling into stillness, we locate ourselves within this cosmic map. Our human world is located to the south of Meru. In Buddhist cosmology, the world system includes 4 continents, one in each cardinal direction from Mount Meru. Our human world, called Jambudvipa, lies to the south. This southern continent is described as shaped like a triangle, like the Indian subcontinent, narrow at the top and broad at the base. It's characterized as a land of action, of karma, where beings have the unique capacity to create both great positive and great negative karma, where spiritual development and complete degradation are both possible. This is the realm of choice, of moral significance, of spiritual opportunity. Being located to the south of Meru, away from the direct presence of the divine, means we're in a position where we must work to approach truth, where enlightenment is possible but not automatic, where we face both challenges and opportunities. This placement reminds us that the human condition is one of potential, of being in a position where liberation is achievable through effort, where we're neither so overwhelmed by suffering that practice is impossible nor so comfortable that we lack motivation. We're in exactly the right place for the spiritual journey. Resting deeply, we understand the deeper meaning of this cosmology. Each realm corresponds to moral and mental states. The entire cosmic structure we've been exploring is not just ancient geography but a profound map of consciousness. The hells correspond to states of extreme anger, hatred, and suffering. The animal realms to instinctual, unreflective states of mind. The hungry ghost realms to states of desperate craving and addiction. The human realm to balanced states with capacity for both good and evil, suffering and happiness. The lower god realms to states of pleasure, power, and pride. The higher form realms to refined meditative states of bliss and peace. The formless realms to the subtlest possible states of consciousness. You can experience all of these within this one human life, within this one mind. When consumed by rage, you're touching the hell realms. When lost in mindless habit, you're in the animal realm. When desperately craving, you're a hungry ghost. When living with awareness and choice, you're fully human. When your mind is filled with loving kindness and peace, you're touching divine states. The cosmos is not just out there but in here, in the vast landscape of your own consciousness. Understanding this, you see that spiritual practice is not about escaping to some other realm but about transforming the realm you're in, purifying consciousness itself, seeing through all realms to the liberation beyond them all. As you sink into peaceful tranquility, we contemplate the temporal dimension of existence. Cosmic cycles of rise and fall repeat endlessly. Just as the cosmos has structure in space, it has structure in time. Everything arises, endures for a time, declines and passes away, only to arise again in endless cycles. This applies to the smallest phenomena and to the universe itself. Even the cosmos is not eternal but goes through vast cycles of formation and dissolution. This teaching of cosmic cycles reinforces the fundamental truth of impermanence, showing that nothing is exempt from change, not even the universe itself. Stars form and die. Galaxies evolve and disperse. Entire world systems arise and pass away. These cycles have no beginning that can be found, no first cause, no point where time started. They've been cycling forever and will continue cycling forever, or at least for periods of time so vast as to be incomprehensible to the human mind. Understanding these cosmic cycles gives perspective on your own small life. Your personal dramas are tiny ripples in an ocean of time so vast that entire universes rise and fall within it. This could feel nihilistic, but instead it can be liberating, helping you hold your concerns more lightly, helping you see what truly matters in the brief span of a human life. Breathing slowly, naturally, we explore the vast temporal cycles in detail. Great eons span formation, duration, destruction, and emptiness. A great eon, or Mahakalpa, is an inconceivably long period of time divided into 4 lesser eons. The first eon is formation, when a new universe arises from the void, when matter coalesces, when worlds form, when life begins to populate the realms. This is followed by the eon of duration, when the universe is stable, when beings live out their karmas, when the wheel of samsara turns in its normal way. Then comes the eon of destruction, when the universe gradually dissolves, consumed by fire, flood, or wind, when realms empty out, when even the gods die and the heavens collapse. Finally comes the eon of emptiness, when nothing exists, when there is only void, until conditions ripen for formation to begin again. These cycles repeat endlessly, each universe arising, enduring, dissolving, and resting in emptiness before the next formation. To help you grasp the vast timescales involved, ancient texts use metaphors like a mountain of solid rock 1 mile high, 1 mile wide, and 1 mile long, brushed once every 100 years by a piece of silk. The time it would take for the mountain to be completely worn away by this gentle brushing is shorter than 1 great eon. These mind-bending timescales serve to emphasize impermanence on the grandest possible scale, showing that absolutely nothing lasts forever. Finally, resting in complete peace, we contemplate a radical truth. Universes arise and dissolve without a creator God. In Buddhist cosmology, there is no creator deity, no God who makes the universe and controls its unfolding. Instead, the universe arises naturally from conditions, from the play of causes and effects, from the nature of reality itself. This is a profound shift from many religious cosmologies. The universe is not created but emerges, not designed but self-organizing according to natural laws. Gods exist in Buddhist cosmology, but they're beings within the system, subject to karma and impermanence like everything else, not transcendent creators standing outside it all. The universe creates itself through dependent arising, each phenomenon arising from causes and conditions, which themselves arose from causes and conditions in beginningless chains of causation. This vision is remarkably compatible with scientific understanding of a universe governed by natural laws, evolving through physical processes without need for supernatural intervention. For Buddhist practice, this means you're not beholden to any creator's will but free to work with natural law, to understand cause and effect, to create your own liberation through right action and clear seeing. The responsibility rests with you. The power to change rests with you. The universe is not a creation to which you must submit, but a natural process you can understand and work with skillfully. Rest now in this vast cosmic vision. Let yourself feel small in the best way. A tiny point of awareness in an incomprehensibly vast universe cycling through endless time. And yet, within you is the capacity to understand it all, to wake up to the truth of it, to find freedom even within this vast, cycling, impermanent cosmos. There is nothing to grasp, nothing to hold, only this moment of rest, this breath, this peaceful awareness. May you see your life in proper perspective. May you use this precious human birth wisely. May you work toward liberation while the opportunity exists. As we continue this peaceful journey into rest and understanding, allow yourself to sink even deeper into tranquility. Feel your body completely at ease, your mind gently floating, your awareness soft and open. In this quiet space, we explore how ancient cosmological teachings translate into living wisdom, how the vast structures we've contemplated find their meaning in consciousness itself. We begin by understanding the true purpose of these cosmic teachings. Cosmology maps onto consciousness and mental states. The elaborate Buddhist cosmology we've explored is not primarily about describing the physical universe, though it does that in its own way. Rather, it's a sophisticated map of consciousness, a symbolic representation of the inner landscape of mind and experience. Every realm, every level, every cosmic structure corresponds to something within your own awareness. The hells are not just places somewhere below, but states of extreme suffering you can experience when consciousness is dominated by hatred and anger. The heavens are not just far above, but states of bliss and peace accessible through meditation and virtue. Mount Meru is not just a mountain somewhere, but the centered, stable awareness at your core. The oceans are not just water, but the flowing, changing nature of experience. Understanding cosmology this way transforms it from ancient mythology into practical psychology, from outdated geography into timeless wisdom about the nature of mind. The ancients were not primitive or confused. They were using cosmic imagery to communicate profound truths about consciousness that remain as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. The universe they described is the universe of experience, the cosmos of consciousness itself. Breathing softly, settling deeper into peace, we explore how this understanding manifests in sacred architecture. Temples, stupas, and mandalas symbolize Mount Meru and its layers. Throughout Buddhist Asia, sacred structures are built to embody cosmic principles, to make the invisible visible, to give physical form to the structure of reality and consciousness. A stupa, that distinctively Buddhist monument with its square base, rounded dome, and spire reaching toward the sky, represents Mount Meru and the path to enlightenment. The square base represents earth and the foundation of ethics. The rounded dome represents water and the realm of meditation. The spire represents fire and the piercing insight of wisdom. The umbrella at the top represents air and space, the freedom of liberation. Walking around a stupa, you're circumambulating the cosmic mountain, the axis of reality. Mandalas, those intricate circular diagrams filled with geometric patterns and deity figures, are two-dimensional representations of the same cosmic structure, showing the center and the progressive layers radiating outward. Temples are often designed as three-dimensional mandalas, with the most sacred space at the center representing the ultimate truth, and surrounding chambers representing progressive stages of the path. These sacred structures serve as teaching tools, as meditation supports, as reminders of the cosmic order, helping practitioners internalize the structure of reality through physical form. Resting peacefully, we contemplate how these symbols guide practice. Visualization guides meditators through spiritual and moral development. In Buddhist meditation, particularly in Vajrayana traditions, practitioners use visualization extensively, imagining detailed images of Buddhas, mandalas, cosmic structures, and purification processes. These visualizations are not mere fantasy but powerful tools for transformation. When you visualize your body as a mandala with Mount Meru as your spine, the realms arranged around you, you're training your mind to perceive reality in a new way, to see the sacred structure underlying ordinary appearance. When you visualize a deity representing perfect compassion or wisdom, you're cultivating those qualities in yourself, using image and imagination to reshape consciousness. When you visualize purification, dark smoke leaving your body and being replaced by pure light, you're working with the mind's capacity to transform through symbolic action. These practices work because mind is malleable, because consciousness responds to imagery and symbol, because what you habitually visualize and imagine shapes how you perceive and who you become. The elaborate visualizations of cosmic structures serve to expand awareness, to help you see beyond the narrow confines of ego-centered perception to the vast, interconnected nature of reality. Through visualization, the cosmic map becomes lived experience. As you drift deeper towards sleep, we explore some of the most profound symbolic teachings. Tantric practices depict atomic-level universes. In advanced Tantric Buddhism, there are teachings about universes within universes, infinite realms existing at every scale of reality. Not only are there vast cosmic structures, but within each atom are entire universes, and within the atoms of those universes are more universes, endlessly fractal, endlessly mirroring each other. This teaching, which sounds remarkably like modern quantum physics and fractals, points to the holographic nature of reality, how the part contains the whole, how patterns repeat at every scale. In Tantric visualization, practitioners sometimes imagine their body containing all the realms, all the Buddhas, the entire cosmos. Or they imagine shrinking their awareness down to perceive the universe within a single atom. These practices cultivate a perception of reality as infinitely deep, infinitely complex, with no absolute scale, no single correct level of magnification. This helps break down fixed conceptions of what's real, what's large or small, what matters and what doesn't. It points toward the fundamental equality and emptiness of all phenomena, how nothing has inherent existence but everything arises dependently, reflecting everything else. These atomic-level universe teachings take the cosmic vision to its ultimate conclusion, showing that the structure we've been exploring exists everywhere, at all scales, in all directions, including within the very atoms of your body right now. Breathing naturally, effortlessly, we return to a key symbol we can work with directly. Mount Meru symbolizes the spine or axis in meditation. In yogic and tantric Buddhist practice, the body becomes the cosmos. Mount Meru, that cosmic axis at the center of the universe, corresponds to the spine, the central channel of energy running from the base of the body to the crown of the head. The various levels of Mount Meru correspond to the chakras, energy centers located along this central axis. The continents around Mount Meru correspond to the limbs extending from the torso. The oceans correspond to bodily fluids. The various heavens correspond to higher states of consciousness accessible through meditation. When you sit in meditation with an erect spine, you're aligning yourself with the cosmic axis, you're embodying Mount Meru. The work of meditation is to clear this central channel, to allow energy and awareness to flow freely up and down the axis, ascending through progressively higher and more refined states of consciousness. This transforms meditation from something you do with your mind into something you do with your whole being, physical and mental, grounded in body and breath, connecting personal practice with cosmic structure. Your spine becomes the axis mundi, the center of the universe, because your direct experience is the only universe you can ever truly know. Settling into stillness, we deepen our psychological understanding. Realms represent psychological and ethical states. We've touched on this throughout, but it bears emphasizing clearly. Every realm in Buddhist cosmology can be understood as a psychological state available within human experience. You don't need to die and be reborn to experience the hell realms. You experience them whenever you're consumed by rage, hatred, or despair. You don't need to become an animal to experience that realm. You experience it whenever you're acting purely on instinct without reflection or choice. The hungry ghost realm is the state of addiction, of insatiable craving, of never having enough. The human realm is that balanced state where you're aware, where you have choice, where both suffering and happiness are present in workable measure. The God realms are states of pleasure, bliss, and contentment, whether from sense pleasure or from meditative absorption. Understanding realms this way makes the entire cosmological system immediately practical and relevant. You're not learning about some far-off places but about your own mind, your own potential states of being. And just as importantly, you're learning that you can move between these states, that you're not stuck in any one realm. Through practice, through wise choice, through understanding and effort, you can move from hellish states toward divine states, from suffering toward peace, from confusion toward clarity. The cosmology becomes a map of your inner territory, showing you where you are and where you can go. Resting deeply, we discover surprising connections. Buddhist cycles parallel modern physics, entropy, and cosmology. When modern science describes the universe, it speaks of the Big Bang, the expansion of space, the eventual heat death of the universe, perhaps followed by another Big Bang in endless cycles. This sounds remarkably similar to Buddhist descriptions of cosmic cycles. Formation arising from emptiness, expansion, duration, contraction, destruction, and return to emptiness. When physicists speak of entropy, of the tendency of ordered systems to become disordered over time, it echoes Buddhist teachings about the inevitable decline and dissolution of all conditioned things. When quantum physics reveals the interconnectedness of all particles, the way observation affects reality, the absence of solid, independent existence at the most fundamental level, it resonates with Buddhist teachings of dependent arising, emptiness, and the role of mind in constructing experience. These parallels don't mean ancient Buddhists somehow knew modern physics, but rather that both are describing the same reality from different perspectives, one from contemplative investigation and symbolic representation, the other from empirical measurement and mathematical description. Both point toward a universe that's vast, interconnected, impermanent, and in which mind and matter are more intimately related than common sense suggests. This dialogue between ancient wisdom and modern science enriches both, showing that different approaches to understanding reality can illuminate complementary aspects of the truth. As you sink into peaceful tranquility, we acknowledge the flexibility of interpretation. Practitioners can interpret realms as states of mind, not literal geography. Buddhism has always contained both literal and metaphorical interpretations of its cosmology. Some practitioners throughout history have taken the descriptions of Mount Meru, the continents, the various realms as literal descriptions of physical reality, actual places where beings are actually born. Others have understood them symbolically as representations of mental states and stages of spiritual development. And many have held both understandings simultaneously, seeing value in the literal mythology while also recognizing the deeper psychological truth it conveys. The Buddha himself often refused to answer metaphysical questions about the ultimate nature of the cosmos, suggesting that such questions were not conducive to liberation, that what mattered was understanding suffering and the path to its cessation. This opens space for practitioners to work with cosmology in whatever way is most helpful for their practice. If literal belief in realms and rebirth motivates ethical behavior and serious practice, then that interpretation serves its purpose. If psychological interpretation that maps realms onto mental states provides insight and guidance, then that interpretation serves its purpose. The teachings are tools for awakening, and tools can be used in different ways by different people. What matters is not believing the right things about cosmic geography, but seeing clearly, living ethically, cultivating wisdom, and moving toward liberation. Breathing slowly, naturally, we appreciate how teachings have evolved. Cultural adaptations spread these teachings across Asia. As Buddhism spread from India across Asia over 2 millennia, the cosmological teachings adapted to different cultures while maintaining core principles. In Tibet, the cosmic imagery merged with indigenous Bon cosmology, creating rich tantric systems of visualization. In China and Japan, Buddhist cosmology mixed with Taoist and Shinto elements, taking on local flavor while preserving essential teachings. In Southeast Asia, Buddhist cosmology absorbed indigenous spirit beliefs and local geography into its framework. Each culture brought its own artistic style, its own metaphors, its own ways of depicting and understanding the cosmic structure. This adaptability shows the flexibility and vitality of Buddhist teaching. its capacity to take root in diverse soils while maintaining its essential nature. The specific images of Mount Meru or the detailed descriptions of hell realms might differ from culture to culture, but the underlying principles remain constant. Reality is vast and interconnected. Existence operates through cause and effect. Consciousness contains multiple possible states, and liberation from suffering is achievable through practice. This cultural adaptability also reminds us that the forms are not the essence, that we too can adapt these ancient teachings to our modern context without losing what makes them true and valuable. Finally, resting in complete peace, we look toward the ongoing dialogue. Modern science, dialogue, and meditation practice continue to explore the connections between mind, cosmos, and reality. The conversation between Buddhism and modern science continues to deepen and evolve. Neuroscientists study long-term meditators to understand how consciousness can be transformed through practice. Physicists dialogue with Buddhist scholars about the nature of reality, emptiness, and interdependence. Psychologists investigate Buddhist techniques for working with mental states, finding them remarkably effective for treating anxiety, depression, and other forms of suffering. Meditation has moved from exotic Eastern practice to mainstream therapeutic tool, bringing ancient wisdom about consciousness into dialogue with modern understanding of the brain and mind. This ongoing exploration reveals that the ancient cosmological teachings, understood properly, contain profound insights about consciousness, reality, and the human condition that remain relevant and valuable. We don't need to choose between ancient wisdom and modern science, but can appreciate both, can let them illuminate each other, can draw on millennia of contemplative investigation, while also benefiting from recent empirical discoveries. The exploration continues, and you're part of it each time you sit in meditation, each time you observe your own consciousness, each time you work to understand the nature of reality through direct experience. The ancient and the modern meet in your practice, in your awareness, in your investigation of this cosmic mystery we call existence. Rest now in this understanding. Let these reflections settle into your awareness like stars settling into their places in the night sky, each one a point of light in the vast darkness, together forming constellations that guide travelers on their way. There is nothing to hold, nothing to solve, only this moment of peace, this breath, this gentle awareness. May you see clearly the connections between inner and outer, between ancient and modern, between symbol and reality. May you use these teachings as tools for awakening. May you find your way to liberation through understanding the cosmos within and without. As we continue this gentle journey into rest and wisdom, allow yourself to become even more relaxed, even more at peace. Feel the softness of this moment, the simplicity of just being here, breathing, resting, alive. In this quiet space, we return to the heart of practice, to the precious present moment, to the only time in which life actually happens. We begin with a profound truth about presence and well-being. Living fully in the present reduces stress and regret. So much of human suffering happens not in the actual present moment, but in thoughts about the past or future. You replay past events, wishing they had gone differently, creating regret and shame. You rehearse future scenarios, imagining everything that could go wrong, creating anxiety and fear. But when you bring your attention fully to this present moment, when you're simply here with what is, you often discover that right now is actually okay. Right now, you're breathing. Right now, you're safe. Right now, there's no crisis demanding your attention. The stress you carry is rarely about what's happening in this actual moment, but about the stories you're telling yourself about what happened or what might happen. When you return to presence, when you drop those stories even briefly, stress naturally decreases. You're no longer fighting with the past or fearing the future. You're simply here, meeting this moment as it is. And regret dissolves in presence because regret can only exist when you're mentally dwelling in the past. When you're truly present, there's no past to regret, only this moment and what you choose to do with it. This doesn't mean you never reflect on the past or plan for the future, but that you do so consciously, from a place of presence, rather than being lost in rumination and worry. Breathing softly, settling deeper into tranquility, we explore the richness of now. The present moment contains life's full potential. Everything you've ever experienced has happened in a present moment. Everything you will ever experience will happen in a present moment. This moment right now is not a barrier standing between you and some future happiness. It's the only place where life actually occurs, where action is possible, where change can happen, where love can be expressed, where insight can arise. The present moment contains infinite potential because it's the meeting point of all causes and conditions, the place where the past flows into the future, the only point where you have any power to affect what comes next. When you're lost in thoughts about past or future, you miss the aliveness of this moment. You miss the opportunities present right here and now. But when you're fully present, you tap into life's full potential. You notice what's actually needed. You respond with wisdom rather than react from habit. You see possibilities you couldn't see when your mind was elsewhere. You experience the vividness, the texture, the richness of actual experience rather than the pale simulacrum of experience that exists in thought. This moment, however ordinary it seems, contains everything. Heaven and earth meet here. All of reality converges here. Your entire life is contained in this single present moment, if you're awake to it. Resting peacefully, we consider the liberation of letting go. Letting go of past regrets creates space for growth. The past is gone, cannot be changed, cannot be undone, cannot be relived. Carrying regret about the past is like dragging heavy chains wherever you go, weighing you down, limiting your movement, consuming your energy. Everyone has done things they're not proud of. Everyone has made mistakes. Everyone has caused harm they wish they could undo. This is part of being human, part of the learning process. But at some point, you must choose whether to continue punishing yourself or to let go, to learn what you can from the past and then release it. Letting go doesn't mean pretending the past didn't happen or that it doesn't matter. It means accepting what happened, learning from it, making amends where possible, and then turning your attention to the present where you can actually do something. When you release past regrets, suddenly there's space in your consciousness for new growth. Energy that was bound up in regret becomes available for creativity, for positive action, for moving forward. The past has taught you what it has to teach. Honor those lessons by living differently now, not by endlessly reliving what cannot be changed. Forgive yourself. You were doing the best you could with the understanding you had at the time. Now you know more. Now you can do better. That's all anyone can ask. Let the past rest in peace so you can live fully in the present. As you drift deeper towards sleep, we explore freedom from future anxiety. Focusing on now prevents distraction by future worries. The future hasn't happened yet. It exists only as imagination, as possibility, as projection. You cannot live in the future, you can only think about it. And while planning and preparing are useful, endless worry about what might happen is not. Worry is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. When you're caught in future worries, you're living in a fantasy of problems that don't exist yet and may never exist. Meanwhile, you're missing the actual present moment where your life is unfolding, where you could be taking real action instead of just spinning in anxiety. Most of what you worry about never happens. And when challenges do arise, you handle them in that moment. You don't handle them now through worry. Focusing on the present moment prevents this distraction by future worries because it anchors you in what's real, what's actual, what's here. When a worry about the future arises, you can notice it, consider whether there's any useful action to take now. Take that action if there is, and then return to presence. The future will take care of itself, or rather, the future will be shaped by how you live this present moment. Take care of now, and the future takes care of itself. This isn't denial or avoidance, it's wisdom, understanding where your power actually lies, which is always here, always now. Breathing naturally, effortlessly, we return to the central practice. Meditation supports deep presence and mental clarity. Meditation is fundamentally about training your mind to be present, to stay with direct experience rather than getting lost in thought, to see clearly what's actually happening rather than seeing through the filter of your stories and interpretations. When you sit in meditation, you practice the art of being here. You notice when your mind wanders to past or future, and you gently bring it back to the present, to breath, to body, to direct sensation. You do this not once but thousands of times, and gradually the mind learns. It becomes more stable, less easily pulled into distraction. Clarity develops because you're seeing experience directly rather than through layers of conceptual overlay. You notice the space between stimulus and response, the gap where choice lives. You see thoughts as thoughts rather than as reality. You observe emotions as emotions rather than being swept away by them. This capacity for presence and clarity developed in meditation then carries into daily life. You find yourself more often present with your children, with your work, with the simple activities of daily life. You're less often lost in your head and more often engaged with actual living. Mental clarity grows because you're no longer so confused by the constant chatter of thought. You can see more clearly what's actually happening and what's needed. Meditation is how you train presence, how you cultivate the capacity to live in the moment rather than just thinking about living. Settling into stillness, we explore how less can be more. Simplicity in daily life fosters connection to the moment. Modern life is often complex, cluttered, overscheduled, overstimulated. You're bombarded with information, pulled in multiple directions, surrounded by possessions, committed to too many obligations. This complexity makes presence difficult because there's always something else demanding your attention, always more to do, to think about, to worry about. Simplicity is the antidote. When you simplify your life, when you let go of what's not essential, when you create space and ease in your daily existence, presence becomes more natural. A simple living space is easier to be present in because it's not constantly visually stimulating or overwhelming. A simpler schedule allows you to be fully present with what you're doing rather than always rushing to the next thing. Fewer possessions mean less to maintain, organize, and think about. Simpler meals can be enjoyed more fully. Simpler entertainment can be more satisfying. This doesn't mean living in deprivation, but rather being intentional about what you include in your life, keeping what truly serves you and letting go of the rest. In simplicity, you discover that you need less than you thought to be happy, that in fact, less often brings more joy, more peace, more presence, because you're not fragmented across so many things but can give your full attention to what matters. Simplicity creates the conditions for deep connection to the present moment. Resting deeply, we return to the Buddha's fundamental teaching. The middle way balances enjoyment and restraint. Living in the moment doesn't mean indulging every impulse, chasing every pleasure, living without any discipline. That path leads to suffering, to addiction, to being controlled by desire. But neither does it mean harsh asceticism, denying all pleasure, punishing the body and mind. That path also leads to suffering. The middle way, the path the Buddha discovered, balances these extremes. You can enjoy life's pleasures when they arise naturally, can appreciate beauty, taste good food, experience comfort, without being enslaved by the craving for these things, without organizing your whole life around seeking them. You can practice discipline, can sometimes choose to refrain from pleasures, can delay gratification, can endure discomfort when needed, without making yourself miserable through harsh denial. The balance is found through wisdom and self-knowledge, through understanding what leads to lasting well-being and what leads to suffering. This balance allows you to be present with both pleasure and pain, enjoying the pleasant without clinging to it, enduring the unpleasant without being destroyed by it. You're not at war with experience but living in harmony with it, neither grasping nor rejecting, simply present and responsive. This middle way is itself a practice of presence, of being with what is rather than always seeking something else or pushing away what's here. As you sink into peaceful tranquility, we explore conscious living. Living intentionally harmonizes action with awareness. To live intentionally means to act consciously, with awareness of what you're doing and why, rather than moving through life on autopilot, driven by habit and impulse. It means pausing, even briefly, to consider your choices. It means asking whether your actions align with your values, with your understanding of what leads to well-being. It means bringing awareness to the small moments as well as the large ones, to how you speak to your child in the morning, how you eat your lunch, how you drive your car, how you respond to frustration. When action is harmonized with awareness, when you're conscious of what you're doing as you're doing it, life becomes more vivid, more meaningful, more satisfying. You're actually living your life rather than just going through the motions. Mistakes become less frequent because you're paying attention. Relationships improve because you're present with people. Work becomes more engaging because you're fully there. This intentional living requires slowing down enough to be aware, creating space between impulse and action, checking in with yourself regularly. But it's not about being perfect or never acting spontaneously. It's about being awake in your own life, being the conscious author of your actions rather than a passive passenger reacting to whatever happens. In this harmony of action and awareness, you discover a deep integrity, a feeling of being aligned with yourself, of living in a way you can respect. Breathing slowly, naturally, we recognize the gift in each moment. Each moment offers opportunities for learning and compassion. No moment is wasted when you're present to it. Even difficult moments, painful moments, boring moments contain something valuable when you're awake to them. Each moment offers the opportunity to learn, to see something new, to understand more deeply. The frustration you feel when stuck in traffic can teach you about patience and acceptance. The pain of a difficult conversation can show you something about yourself or others. The boredom of a repetitive task can reveal the restlessness of your mind and the possibility of being present even when experience isn't exciting. And each moment offers the opportunity for compassion, for responding to yourself and others with kindness rather than judgment. When you're present, you notice suffering, your own and others, and you can respond with care rather than indifference. You can speak a kind word, offer a smile, listen deeply, extend forgiveness, practice patience. These small acts of compassion in ordinary moments are not less valuable than grand gestures. They're the fabric of a compassionate life, the way compassion becomes real and practical rather than just an abstract ideal. Living in the present moment with awareness, you discover that every moment is rich with potential, that no moment is too small or insignificant to matter, that life is made of these moments, and how you meet them is how you live. Finally, resting in complete peace, we celebrate the fruits of presence. Presence nurtures creativity and insight. When your mind is cluttered with past and future, when you're constantly distracted and fragmented, there's no space for creativity or insight to arise. New ideas, creative solutions, deep insights require space, quiet, openness. They emerge not from thinking harder, but from the spaciousness that presence creates. When you're fully present, when your mind is clear and open, you're available for inspiration. You notice connections you couldn't see when your mind was busy. Solutions appear that weren't visible through the fog of distraction. Creative impulses arise from depths you can't access when you're skimming along the surface of constant busyness. Artists, writers, scientists, inventors often speak of their best ideas coming when they're relaxed, present, not striving, perhaps taking a walk or shower or just sitting quietly. This is the creativity that presence nurtures, the insight that arises from stillness. And this applies not just to artistic or intellectual creativity, but to the art of living, to finding creative solutions to relationship challenges, to discovering new ways of being in the world, to insights about yourself and the nature of reality. All of this emerges from presence, from the open, clear, available quality of mind that comes from being fully here, fully now, fully alive to this moment. Rest now in this understanding. Let yourself be fully present with this moment of rest, not thinking about it, not analyzing it, just being with it. Feel your breath. Notice the stillness. Rest in the simplicity of now. There is nowhere else to be, nothing else to do. This moment is enough. You are enough. Here now at peace. May you live fully in each moment. May you discover the freedom and joy that presence brings. May you awaken to the miracle of being alive, right here, right now,